"That grave ain't empty," the little boy said. What the cowboy dug up made him stagger. The first shovel strike rang like a gunshot in the frozen ground, and the little boy flinched so hard he nearly dropped the lantern. "Stop," he said. His voice came out thin, like it had to squeeze past fear to exist at all. "Mister, that grave ain't empty." Cole Mercer kept his hands on the shovel handle, breathing through his nose, watching the boy's face over the lantern flame. The child couldn't have been more than 8, dirt-smudged cheeks, hair cut with a knife, eyes too steady for his size. Cole had learned a long time ago that the West didn't give children wide eyes, it gave them sharp ones. Before we continue, tell us in the comments from what town you are watching this from. The lantern hissed in the wind, throwing light across the cemetery hill and the crooked row of headstones below. The town of Rattlesnake Crossing sat in the valley like it was ashamed of itself, lamps dim, streets empty, the saloon's piano dead for once. Up here it was only the cold, the stones, and the fresh mound Cole had been paid to open. He'd buried men in Kansas. He'd buried a woman outside Abilene with his own hands. He'd buried a child once, too, back when he still believed the ground could swallow grief and keep it. Tonight, he wasn't burying anybody. Tonight, he was undoing a burial, and every instinct in his body hated it. "Who told you to come up here?" Cole asked. The boy kept the lantern lifted like it was a shield. "Nobody." "That's a lie," the boy swallowed. "I followed you." Cole's jaw worked. He'd noticed small tracks on the trail, but he'd told himself they were rabbits. He'd told himself a lot of things in the last 4 years to keep moving without looking back. "You got a name?" "Finn." "Finn what?" Finn hesitated, then said it like it tasted bad. "Finn Barrow." Cole stared at him a beat too long. Barrow was a common name, but something about the way the boy said it, like he was borrowing it, like it didn't belong to him, put a splinter under Cole's skin. Cole turned back to the grave. The mound was fresh, the soil darker than the rest of the hill. A rough wooden marker stood at the head, no name carved, just a line burned into it with a poker. Elias Turner, 1874 to 1882, 8 years old, buried 3 days ago. And now the mayor wanted him dug up. The mayor hadn't said why, not in plain words. Men like Mayor Caldwell didn't pay in plain words. He'd slid 3 gold eagles across the saloon table and kept his eyes on Cole's hands, not his face. "Just do the job quiet," Caldwell had said, "and don't ask questions you don't want answered." Cole had taken the coins because a man on the move took what he could get, and because he'd been sleeping in ditches for 2 weeks, and the winter was tightening its fist. Now he stood over the grave with a shovel, and a child with a lantern told him the grave wasn't empty. Cole spat into the dirt. "You're scared of ghosts, Finn?" Finn's mouth tightened. "I ain't scared of ghosts." "You should be. Ghosts don't bleed." Finn's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. His knuckles went pale. "It ain't about ghosts." Cole leaned on the shovel. The wind pushed against his coat like it wanted him off the hill. Somewhere down in town, a dog barked once, then stopped, like it remembered it wasn't safe to make noise. "All right," Cole said. "Tell me what you mean." Finn's eyes flicked to the dark line of trees beyond the cemetery fence. "Somebody been coming up here at night." Cole didn't move. "How do you know?" "I seen it." "You seen it," Cole repeated, slow. Finn nodded once, like that was the only nod he had in him. "2 nights, same time. After the last lamp goes out. A man rides up without a lantern. He don't go near the stones. He goes straight to this one." "And you watched him?" Finn's chin lifted a hair. "I watched." Cole felt his grip tighten. Riding without a lantern at night wasn't brave. It was practiced. It was something men did when they didn't want anybody to remember their face. "What did he do?" Finn's throat bobbed. He knelt down, like he was listening. Cole stared at the mound. Listening to what? A dead child. A buried secret. Then Finn said, "Last night I heard scraping." Cole's eyes cut back to him. "From where?" Finn pointed at the grave without touching it. "From under there." Cole's stomach tightened. The cold wasn't the only thing biting now. "You heard scraping," Cole said, "and you didn't run to your ma." Finn's eyes went flat. "Ain't got one." "Your pa." "Ain't got one." Cole held him there with his gaze. Finn held it back, and for a second, Cole saw something older than the boy's face, something that didn't belong in an 8-year-old body. "Who do you got?" Cole asked. Finn's shoulders rose and fell once. "I got me." Cole looked away, because he knew that answer too well. He turned to the grave again. The work had to be done. Whether the grave was empty or full, whether it was right or wrong, Caldwell had paid, and money kept a man alive. Cole drove the shovel into the mound again. Dirt cracked loose. Frozen clods broke and rolled down the side of the hole. The sound was loud up here, too loud, like the whole hill was listening. Finn steadied the lantern, holding it closer. The light made his breath visible. "Back up," Cole said. Finn didn't move. "Finn." "I gotta see," the boy whispered. Cole didn't like it, but he didn't have time to argue. He dug. Each shovel full came up heavier than it should have, like the earth was reluctant to give anything back. Cole's shoulders warmed, then burned. Sweat ran down between his shoulder blades and turned cold the instant it hit air. The hole deepened. The dirt changed. First the topsoil, then packed clay, then that darker, damp layer that meant he was nearing the coffin. Cole stopped, listening without meaning to. The wind. The lantern hiss. His own breath. Nothing else. He worked again, careful now, too careful. His shovel scraped wood. Cole froze. Finn's lantern trembled. Cole knelt and brushed dirt aside with his gloved hand until the coffin lid showed, a cheap pine box nailed shut, the kind of box poor folks bought when they couldn't afford anything better. Cole pressed his palm to the lid. Cold, solid, not empty. Finn's voice came out strained. "It ain't right." Cole didn't answer. He slid his fingers under the edge, found the nail heads. The mayor had told him to open it. He hadn't said how. Cole pulled a pry bar from his saddlebag and set it at the lid seam. He glanced at Finn. "You sure you want to be here?" Finn's eyes flicked to the hole, then back to Cole. "I'm already here." Cole levered the bar. The nail squealed. The lid shifted a fraction. Finn sucked in a breath. Cole levered again. Another nail gave, then another. The sound was wrong in the night, too sharp, too final. When the lid loosened, Cole stopped, breathing hard. His hands hovered over the box like it could bite. A coffin was supposed to hold quiet. Cole heard it then, so faint he thought it was his own pulse at first. A scratch. From inside the box, Finn made a sound that wasn't a word. He backed up a step and hit the grave edge with his boot, dirt crumbling under him. Cole's heart slammed once, hard. He leaned closer, ear near the lid. The lantern light shivered across the pine. Another scratch. Not a rat, not wood settling, not the wind, a deliberate drag. Cole's throat went dry. He looked at Finn. "Who else knows you've been watching?" Finn shook his head fast. "Nobody." "You tell anybody?" "No." Cole believed him, because if he'd told, the whole town would be up here with shovels and rifles and prayers. Instead, it was just them, and that meant Finn had been carrying this alone. Cole set both hands on the coffin lid. Finn whispered, "Don't." Cole looked down into the hole. The wood was cheap, the nails were fresh pulled. Whatever was inside had been trapped there 3 days. If it was alive, it wouldn't be for long. Cole lifted. The lid rose with a soft groan of wood. A stench rose with it, sweet and rotten at the same time, like wet cloth left in a barrel too long. Finn gagged. Cole held the lid halfway, forced himself to look. At first, he saw only darkness and crumpled cloth. Then, something moved. A hand, small, filthy, nails cracked, shot up and grabbed the coffin edge with sudden strength. Finn screamed. Cole's whole body jerked back, but the hand held on, knuckles white, as if letting go meant dying. Cole stared at the wrist. There was a rope burn around it, fresh, angry. Not a dead child's wrist. A whisper came from inside the coffin, raw and hoarse. "Help!" Cole staggered, his boot slipping on loose dirt, the lid dropping from his hands and slamming against the coffin rim. And from inside, a second voice rasped, low and wrong, like it was smiling in the dark. "You shouldn't have opened it." Cole's hand went for his Colt before his mind caught up, but the barrel hesitated over the open coffin like it didn't know what to aim at. The small hand clamped on the rim, shaking, fingernails split and black with dirt. Something below it shifted, and the lantern light caught a face for half a second, skin stretched tight, lips cracked, eyes wide and bloodshot. Alive. Finn's scream died into a wheeze, his feet skidding back from the edge. That ain't... Cole dropped to one knee and hooked his arm under the child's shoulder. The body was light as kindling and limp in the wrong places, like it had been tied too long. The stench rolled up in waves, sweat, old vomit, and something coppery. The second voice came again, close enough to be inside the box, but not from the child's throat. "You shouldn't have opened it." Cole yanked hard. The boy surged upward, gasping, and for a heartbeat, Cole saw more than a face. He saw a rope mark around the neck, and beneath the dirt a bruise shaped like a hand. The child's teeth chattered so fast it sounded like castanets. And then something else moved in the coffin's shadow. Not a rat, not cloth settling. A shape pressed upward against the remaining darkness, like a head lifting, like a mouth forming words where no mouth should have been. Cole jerked the boy out and rolled him onto the frozen ground, away from the hole. The child coughed once, wet and deep, then curled in on himself, arms wrapped around his ribs. Finn hovered, terrified, but locked to the scene. "Mr. Cole." Cole shoved a glove toward him without looking. "Hold that lantern steady and don't you come closer to the hole. You understand?" Finn nodded too fast, eyes huge, lantern shaking so the light skipped like it wanted to run. Cole leaned over the grave again, gun up this time. The coffin lay open, lid jammed crooked against the rim. The inside was a mess of crumpled burlap and stained cloth, enough to hide something the size of a man if you folded it right. Cole's throat tightened. He forced air in. "Show yourself," he said. Only the wind answered. The darkness inside looked wrong. Not empty dark. Waiting dark. Oh yeah, Cole reached down with the barrel of his Colt and jabbed the cloth. It shifted, heavy. He jabbed again, harder, and the cloth sagged, revealing not a face but a carved chunk of wood, smeared with something dark. A crude mask, the kind men used for plays or cheap scares. Hollow eyes, a slit for a mouth, the jaw carved into a crooked grin. Cole's stomach turned. The voice had come from there, from a trick. He dragged the mask out with the gun barrel and flung it aside. It hit the dirt with a soft thud, and the grin stared up at the stars. Finn whispered, That's wicked." Cole's eyes swept the coffin. Under the cloth was a small tin canister wedged near the child's feet. When Cole hooked it with his knife and pulled it free, it clinked against the wood like it was packed with something hard. He didn't open it yet. He stared down again, and the sense of being watched tightened around him like wire. "What's your name?" Cole asked the child on the ground. The boy tried to speak and only rasped. His eyes rolled toward Cole, then away, like he couldn't bear the light. Cole crouched and put 2 fingers on the boy's pulse at the wrist. Fast, weak, alive. "Name," Cole said, quieter. The boy's lips moved. Nothing came. Finn stepped forward a fraction, then stopped himself. "He can't. His throat's... He'd been screaming down there, maybe." Cole looked at Finn sharply. Finn swallowed. "Scraping. That's what I heard. He was trying." Cole's jaw hardened. 3 days in the ground. If that was true, the boy should have been dead. Unless the grave had been opened. Unless someone had been feeding him air. Unless someone wanted him there. Cole stood and scanned the cemetery, the fence line, the trees, the slope down toward town. Nothing but darkness and a sky full of cold stars. "Finn," Cole said, "run to the livery. Get my mare. Bring her up quiet." Finn hesitated. Now," Cole snapped. Finn bolted, lantern swinging, light bouncing down the hill like a fleeing firefly. Cole knelt again beside the boy. He peeled his own coat off and draped it over the child's shoulders. The boy flinched like fabric was a whip. "Easy," Cole said. You're out now." The boy's eyes locked onto Cole's face, and for a second, Cole saw something like recognition. Then the boy's gaze slid past him to the open grave, and his lips trembled. Cole followed that stare back to the coffin. The cloth in the box shifted again. Cole's spine went stiff. He raised his Colt, steadying his breath, and reached down with his left hand. He gripped the cloth, ready to yank it away. A tiny click sounded from inside the coffin. Cole froze, every nerve screaming. A spring, a trap. He jerked his hand back just as a thin wire snapped upward, whipping through the air where his fingers had been. It cut a clean line through lantern light, sang for a heartbeat, then went slack, dangling. Cole stared at it, chest tight. Someone had rigged the coffin, not to keep the boy in, to take the fingers off whoever tried to pull him out. Cole swallowed bile. He leaned in, careful, and saw the wire ran to the tin canister spot, an improvised snare, crude but effective. Whoever said it wasn't a professional, but they were mean. Cole stepped back and covered the grave with his gun again, eyes flicking over every shadow. He listened. A far-off creak, then another. Not the cemetery, not the wind. Leather. A saddle. Cole's blood went cold. Finn wasn't back yet. Cole grabbed the boy under the arms and hauled him to his feet. The child's legs buckled immediately. Cole caught him, lifted him like a sack, and moved toward the nearest headstones for cover. The sound came again. Hooves, slow and deliberate, approaching without a lantern. Cole crouched behind a leaning stone and held the boy tight against his chest, one arm around him, the other keeping the Colt aimed toward the trail that came up the hill. The boy in his arms trembled so hard, Cole felt it in his ribs. He tried to speak, jaw working, and finally a whisper scraped out, barely more than breath. "He's back." Cole's grip tightened. "Who's back?" The boy's eyes were fixed on the dark trail. The man. Cole forced himself to keep breathing. He couldn't see anything yet, but he could feel the presence, like the night had turned its face toward them. A horse appeared between two pines, a darker shadow moving through darkness. No lantern, just a rider hunched low, hat brimmed down, cloak hanging off his shoulders. The horse stopped at the cemetery gate. The rider stayed still, listening. Cole didn't move. The boy in his arms went rigid. The rider's head turned slowly, as if he could smell the disturbed earth. Then he clicked his tongue, and the horse walked forward into the cemetery, straight toward the fresh-dug grave. Cole's finger settled on the trigger. He measured the distance. He could take the shot from here. He could put the rider down before he reached the hole. But then what? A dead man in the graveyard, a half-dead child in his arms, and a mayor who'd paid him to do this quiet. Cole had been chased for less. The rider dismounted, silent as a cat. He approached the grave and stopped at the edge, looking down into it. Cole saw his hands clearly now, gloved, thick, moving with calm certainty. The rider reached down and touched the coffin lid like a man greeting a friend. Then he spoke. Not loud. Not for Cole. For the grave. "You got out," the rider said. There was annoyance in it, like a farmer finding a gate left open. "That ain't polite." The boy in Cole's arms made a small sound, like he'd been punched. The rider's head lifted. Cole's heart hammered. He pressed himself tighter behind the stone. The rider stared into the night, head tilting. Cole couldn't see the rider's eyes under the brim, but he felt them sweep the cemetery like a knife blade. Then the rider turned slightly, and his gaze landed on the discarded wooden mask lying in the dirt. He went still. A long, slow silence. Then the rider sighed, almost tired. "You ain't alone." Cole's muscles locked. The rider stepped toward the mask, bent, and picked it up. He turned it in his hands as if checking for damage, then looked back at the open grave and the disturbed soil. "Mayor said no mess," the rider murmured. "Mayor said bury it and forget it. Folks don't forget, though." Cole's eyes narrowed. He knew that voice. Not the tone, but the shape of it, flat and educated in a place where men mostly spoke like gravel. The rider took one step closer to the grave, then stopped again, listening. Cole's mare whickered faintly somewhere down the hill. Cole's breath caught. The rider's head snapped toward the sound, sharp, predatory. He turned his body toward the trail, away from the grave. Cole's mind raced. Finn was coming up with the horse. If the rider met him, Finn was dead. The rider had no lantern because he didn't want witnesses. Finn was a witness. Cole moved. He rose from behind the stone and fired once into the ground a yard from the rider's boots. The shot cracked across the hill, loud enough to wake the dead. The rider flinched back, hand going to his own gun, eyes locking on Cole. For the first time, Cole saw the rider's face under the brim, hard lines, a neat mustache, cheekbones like a whip. Not a drifter, not a ranch hand, a man who shaved. "You," the rider said, voice tightening, "you're the one Caldwell hired." Cole kept the Colt steady. "Step away from that hole." The rider glanced at the grave, then at the boy in Cole's arms. His expression changed, just a flicker, but it was enough. Surprise, then irritation, then something colder. "That ain't yours," the rider said. "He's alive," Cole snapped. The rider's mouth twitched. "For now." Cole's blood surged. "Who are you?" The rider's gloved hand hovered near his holster without drawing. Name don't matter. What matters is you just made this loud. Cole took one step forward, keeping the boy shielded. You put him in that box? The rider didn't answer, but his eyes slid to the boy's rope-burned neck like he was checking a bruise on a horse. That child in the ground got a name? Cole demanded. Elias Turner. You bury him too? Or was that marker just to keep folks from asking why there's digging at night? The rider's gaze sharpened at Marker. Then he smiled, thin and humorless. You got a lot of questions for a hired shovel, he said. Caldwell ought to pick better men. A second sound came from the trees behind the rider, another horse shifting weight, another presence Cole hadn't seen. Ain't leaving this hill, Mercer? Cole's ain't leaving this hill, Mercer. Cole's skin prickled. How do you know my name? The rider's smile widened by a fraction. Some men carry their names like a brand, hard to miss. Finn's voice suddenly cut through the dark from down the hill, breathless and frightened. Mr. Cole, Cole shouted. Stop! Stay where you are! Too late. Finn appeared at the cemetery gate, leading Cole's mare by the reins, lantern bouncing in his other hand. The light spilled across the rider's face, across the grave, across the open coffin, across everything. Finn saw the stranger and froze. The rider turned slowly toward Finn. His expression didn't change, but something in the air did, like a door closing. Finn tried to back up, but his boots caught on a rock and he stumbled. Cole's mare snorted, ears pinning back. The rider moved like a whip crack. He drew and fired once. The lantern in Finn's hand shattered in a spray of glass and flame. Oil splashed across the ground, fire blooming bright and sudden. Finn screamed and dropped to his knees, hands over his face. Cole fired back, aiming for the rider's shoulder. The bullet tore through the rider's cloak, spinning him half around, but he didn't fall. He staggered, then snapped his gun up again. Cole ducked behind the headstone as a shot punched into rock and threw stone chips into his cheek. The boy in Cole's arms began to thrash, making a raw, choking sound, panic taking over. Cole held him tighter. Quiet, he hissed. Quiet or we're all dead. The rider's voice came over the crackle of burning oil. Give him to me, Mercer. You don't want what follows if you keep him. Cole peeked around the stone. Finn was crawling away from the flames, sobbing, dirt in his palms. The rider stood between Finn and the gate, gun low but ready, eyes flicking between them. Cole's mind snapped into focus. He couldn't win a straight shootout with two men, not with a child in his arms and Finn exposed. He had one chance: movement, confusion, and speed. Cole shouted, Finn, get on the mare and ride. Don't look back. Finn blinked through tears. But you, ride! Finn scrambled, grabbed the mare's mane, and hauled himself up clumsy. The mare danced, frightened by fire and gunshots. The rider lifted his gun toward Finn. Cole rose and fired twice, fast. The first shot missed. The second hit the rider's gun hand, jerking it sideways. The rider cursed, weapon dropping. Finn kicked the mare's sides and the horse lunged forward, nearly throwing him, then bolted down the hill into the dark. Cole didn't watch him go. He grabbed the tin canister from beside the grave. He didn't know why, only that it mattered, and then he ran. He sprinted toward the fence line with the half-dead boy over his shoulder, boots slipping in the oil-slicked dirt, fire snapping at his heels. A shot cracked behind him, and a bullet punched through the air close enough to sting. Cole hit the fence, threw his weight over, tore his coat on a nail, and landed hard on the other side. The boy groaned, limp. Cole ran downhill into the trees, using the shadows, using the chaos. Behind him, the rider shouted something to his partner. Hooves thundered, branches snapped, the chase beginning. Cole didn't stop. He pushed deeper into the pines, breath burning, the child's ribs pressing against his shoulder like a bundle of bones. The boy's mouth moved near Cole's ear, a whisper lost in the rush of blood and wind. Cole turned his head, straining to hear it. The boy breathed out 3 words, so weak they almost vanished. He's not dead. Cole ran blind through the pines, letting the slope do the work, using trunks as shields and darkness as cover. Branches snapped at his face. The boy bounced on his shoulder with every stride, light as a sack of bones, making small wet sounds like he was swallowing blood. Behind them, hooves tore the ground, not close enough to see, close enough to hear. One horse, then another, weaving between trees, men who knew how to ride without lanterns in timber. Cole's lungs burned. He forced himself to slow just a hair, not for comfort, for sound. Panic made noise. Noise got you killed. He cut hard left where the trees thickened, then dropped into a shallow wash hidden under dead needles. He slid, caught himself, and crouched low. The boy sagged against his shoulder, mouth open, breath rattling. Cole pressed the boys back to a fir trunk and listened. Hooves hammered past above the wash, twice, then circled. A low voice carried through the trees, flat, controlled, the same voice from the graveyard. "He went downhill. He's heavy. He can't run far with that on him." Another voice answered, rougher. "You sure he didn't ditch the kid?" "He won't. Not Mercer. He thinks he's a man." Cole's jaw tightened at the sound of his own name in that mouth. The riders slowed, leather creaked, a horse snorted, close now. Cole didn't move. He didn't blink. He let the cold and the pine smell fill his head and shove everything else out. The boy's fingers curled weakly at Cole's sleeve, as if even unconscious he knew to hold on. A branch snapped above them. Cole's hand tightened around the Colt, but he didn't raise it. If he fired, he'd light himself like a beacon. Something fell into the wash, soft, then skittered. A pine cone, a test. Cole stayed still. The riders shifted again, listening. "Find him," the rough voice said. "Caldwell don't pay us to lose him." "Caldwell don't know what he pays for," the flat voice replied. "Just move." Hooves clopped away, slow, searching. Cole waited until the sound thinned, then he moved. He lifted the boy again, careful this time, and climbed up the wash in the opposite direction, staying low, keeping to shadows. Every step was measured. He wasn't running anymore. Running was for when you didn't have a plan. Now he needed cover, warmth, and answers. The tin canister was still in his pocket. It bumped against his ribs like a heartbeat that wasn't his. He moved through the timber until the cemetery hill disappeared behind him and the slope leveled out into a wider patch of forest. He found a fallen log and eased the boy down, rolling him onto his side the way you did with men who might choke. The boy's eyelids fluttered. His lips worked. Cole leaned in. "Hey, stay with me." The boy's throat made a sound like sandpaper. He forced out air. Then, barely, a word. "Water?" Cole glanced around. Dark, no creek sound, no moonlight, just needles and cold. "I got none," Cole said. "You can swallow snow if you find it, but not now. Breathe." The boy's eyes opened a sliver. In the dim, they looked too bright, like fever. "He's not dead," the boy whispered again, as if the words were tied to him and he couldn't let them go. Cole held his gaze. "Who's not dead?" The boy swallowed, winced. His hand went toward his own neck, fingers brushing the rope burn like it was proof of something. "The preacher," he rasped. "He said he was dead, but he ain't." Cole's stomach tightened. A preacher? In a town like Rattlesnake Crossing, a preacher wasn't just a man with a Bible. He was a pillar, a cover, a witness. "What preacher?" Cole asked. The boy's eyes shifted past Cole, scanning the dark like he expected it to move. "Reverend Sutter." Cole didn't know the name, but the way the boy said it, like a curse, was enough. "Why'd they put you in the coffin?" Cole asked. The boy's breath hitched. Tears gathered but didn't fall, freezing at the rims of his eyes. "I saw." "Saw what?" A long pause. The boy tried to sit up and failed, shoulders collapsing. "The cellar." Cole leaned closer. "What cellar?" "The church," the boy whispered. "Under it." Cole felt the cold crawl up his spine. "You're saying the church has a cellar?" The boy nodded, tiny. "And you saw something there?" The boy's lips trembled. "Elias." Cole's eyes flicked to the marker burned into the wood. "Elias Turner, 8 years old, buried 3 days ago." The boy's voice broke. "He was down there. He wasn't supposed to be. They made him." Cole's hands clenched, then loosened. "Made him do what?" The boy's eyes squeezed shut. He breathed through pain, then whispered, "Dig." Cole stared. Dig, graves, cellars, the mayor paying him to unbury a child, pieces turning, not fitting yet, but close enough to cut. A faint sound drifted through the trees, metal against metal, like a bit jingling. A horse, moving, close again. Cole's muscles locked. He grabbed the boy, pulling him back behind the fallen log. He pressed the boy's head down gently but firm. "Quiet," he breathed. "Not a sound." The boy's eyes flew open, panic flashing. He nodded once, tight, and clamped his mouth shut. Cole eased his Colt up and angled it toward the direction of the sound. The trees ahead shifted, barely, a ripple in darkness. A horse's silhouette moved between trunks, slow, careful. No lantern, just a shadow on four legs with a shadow on top. Cole didn't fire. Not yet. He waited for the rider to pass the narrow lane between two firs where the silhouette would be clean. The rider stopped. Cole felt it before he heard it, the way a hunter feels a deer pause because it smells him. The rider's head turned slowly, scanning. Cole held his breath. A long silence. Then the rider spoke, not loud, but it carried. "Mercer." Cole didn't move. "Mercer," the voice repeated, flat, patient, like calling a dog out from under a porch. The horse shifted weight. Leather creaked. The rider's hand moved, subtle, toward his holster. Cole's finger settled on the trigger. The boy beside him trembled so hard, the log vibrated faintly. Cole leaned down to the boy's ear, barely moving his lips. "When I say run, you crawl the other way. You understand?" The boy's eyes flicked to Cole's. Fear. Then a hard nod. Cole raised the Colt a fraction, sighting through the dark. Then, from behind and to Cole's left, another voice spoke. Close. "Don't." Cole's blood went ice. He spun, Colt swinging. A figure stepped out from behind a tree 10 feet away. Not the rider. Smaller, no hat, no horse. Just a man on foot, bundled in a coat too big, hands up. Cole froze with the gun trained on him. The man's face was gaunt, beard uneven, eyes wild but not stupid. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Don't shoot," the man whispered. "He'll hear. He'll kill us both." Cole didn't lower the Colt. "Who the hell are you?" The man swallowed. "Name's Harlan. I've been watching that hill since they put the boy in the ground." Cole's eyes flicked past him, toward the rider's silhouette still out there, listening. Harlan's gaze slid to the boy behind the log. His face tightened. "You got him out." Cole's voice came out low, razor thin. "You know what's happening." Harlan nodded, quick. "I know enough to die for it if I stay in town." The rider's horse snorted faintly. Harlan flinched like it hurt. "We ain't safe here." Cole held the Colt steady. "Talk fast." Harlan leaned in, whispering through chapped lips. "They ain't just burying kids. They're moving something. The church ain't a church. It's a front. Caldwell, Sutter, that fancy bastard with the mustache. His name's Grady Pike. He works for the land company out east. Papers, deeds, money. They're buying up this valley and folks won't sell." Cole's jaw tightened. "So they force them." Harlan's eyes burned. "They scare them. They make examples. They take a man's boy and put him in the ground, and suddenly a rancher signs whatever you put in front of him." Cole felt something heavy settle behind his ribs. He'd seen that kind of fear. Wars, raids, mobs. Fear with a purpose. "The kid said there's a cellar under the church," Cole murmured. Harlan's throat bobbed. "That's where they keep them before they're done." Cole's gaze sharpened. "Done with what?" Harlan swallowed hard. "Before they decide whether the family signs. If they sign, the boy comes back. Quiet. Changed. If they don't, well." Cole's eyes went to the boy's neck, the rope burn, the bruises, alive but barely. A warning that walked and breathed. The rider's voice came again, closer now. "Mercer, you ain't leaving." Harlan's eyes widened. "He's coming off his horse." Cole made a decision without saying it. He grabbed the boy, hauled him up, and shoved him into Harlan's arms. Harlan almost dropped him. "I can't." "You can," Cole hissed. "Take him. Move. Stay low. Head north to the old mining cut. There's a lean-to there. I'll draw them off." Harlan's face twisted. "You'll die." Cole looked past him at the dark rider shape. "Maybe, but you and that boy won't if you move now." Harlan hesitated one heartbeat too long. Cole snapped, "Go." Harlan turned and slipped into the timber, half carrying, half dragging the boy, moving with desperate care. Cole stayed behind the log, alone now, and waited. The rider stepped into a clearer patch, finally close enough for moonlight to catch the edge of his jaw. Grady Pike, the mustache, the shaved cheeks, the kind of man who didn't belong in the dirt. He walked like he owned the ground. Cole rose slowly, making sure Pike could see him. Pike stopped and smiled faintly. "There you are." Cole held the Colt at his side, casual as if his heart wasn't punching his ribs. "You're far from town for a man who likes clean boots." Pike's eyes flicked to the log, to the disturbed ground, to the shadows. He didn't look nervous. He looked irritated. You made a mess, Pike said. Cole's mouth tightened. That child in the coffin wasn't Elias Turner. Pike's smile didn't change. You're observant. Where's Elias? Cole asked. Pike's eyes narrowed a fraction. You don't get to ask questions. Cole stepped sideways, slow, leading Pike's attention away from where Harlan had gone. Mayor Caldwell paid me to dig. He didn't say anything about kidnapping. Pike chuckled once. It was dry, like paper. Caldwell pays you because you're disposable. If you don't come back, he'll say you ran off with the money. Cole kept moving, careful not to hurry. What's in the church cellar? Pike's gaze sharpened. Nothing you'll see. Another rider emerged behind Pike, shadow on shadow, gun low. The rough-voiced one, bigger, meaner, the kind who enjoyed work like this. Cole measured angles, distances, trees. If he started shooting, he could take one, maybe. Not both, not without getting cut. Pike spoke softly, almost kindly. Give me the boy. Cole lied without blinking. He's dead. He suffocated. You set a trap in the coffin, remember? It wasn't meant for him. It was meant for me. The Rough Rider laughed. He's lying. Pike's eyes stayed on Cole. Mercer, I respect skill. I don't respect stupidity. You can walk away from this if you stop making it personal. Cole's voice went hard. You put a living child in a box and buried him. That ain't business. Pike tilted his head. It is if it moves paper. Cole felt the urge to shoot rise hot and clean, but he crushed it down. Rage got you killed fast. He stepped another pace sideways, keeping Pike's attention. You're from the land company, Cole said. You're buying this valley cheap. Pike's smile widened. Buying implies consent. We're correcting an inconvenience. Inconvenience being people. Pike's shrug was almost elegant. People move. Land doesn't. Cole's fingers tightened around the Colt grip. And Elias? Pike's gaze went flat. Elias Turner is a name we used to keep the town quiet. The actual boy is elsewhere. The words landed heavy. The marker wasn't a grave. It was a message. Cole's blood ran colder. Elsewhere where? Pike's eyes held Cole's like nails. Mercer, last chance. You step aside. You let us fix this mistake. You go back to your wandering life, or you become a lesson too. Cole breathed once, steady. You already got your lesson. You just ain't learned it yet. The Rough Rider shifted, impatient. Shoot him. Pike lifted a hand, calm. Not yet. Cole's mind raced. Harlan needed time. Finn needed distance. The boy needed warmth. Cole needed an opening. He glanced down, then back up, as if thinking. Pike took a slow step forward. Cole threw the tin canister at Pike's feet. It hit the ground and popped open. White powder burst into the air in a dry cloud, catching moonlight like ghost smoke. Lime, quicklime, the stuff undertakers used and men who wanted to erase smells. Pike recoiled, coughing, hand rising to his face. Cole moved. He shot the Rough Rider first, a clean crack in the night. The bullet slammed into the man's shoulder, spinning him. The man roared and fired blindly, shot chewing bark off a tree behind Cole. Cole sprinted into the timber, weaving, low, fast, using trunks as shields. Pike shouted behind him, voice sharp now, no patience left. After him! Don't let him reach the cut! Hooves thundered again. Cole ran, not downhill this time, north toward the old mining scar Harlan had mentioned, because if Pike knew it too, that meant it mattered. And if it mattered, then it was either a trap or a way out. Either way, it was where answers waited. The forest thinned into broken ground, rocks and scrub, the smell of old iron faint in the air. The mining cut appeared ahead like a wound, dark trench carved into the hillside. Cole saw the lean-to, a low, half-collapsed shelter of boards and canvas tucked beneath an overhang. Harlan was there, crouched, trying to keep the boy upright. The boy's head lolled, his skin looked gray. Harlan's eyes snapped up. You led them right here. I didn't have a choice, Cole snapped. He grabbed the boy, laid him gently against the rock where the wind couldn't bite so hard. The boy's eyelids fluttered, his mouth moved. Cole leaned close. Listen to me. What's your name? The boy struggled, breath rasping. Jonah, he whispered. Jonah what? The boy's eyes filled, but he forced it out. Turner. Cole's chest tightened. Elias Turner wasn't dead. Elias Turner was a name on a marker. Jonah Turner was the boy they buried. Harlan whispered, horrified. They used the dead name like a blanket. Cole's jaw clenched. Jonah, where's Elias? Jonah's eyes rolled toward the dark cut as if the earth itself held the answer. They took him under the boards, in the cellar. Reverend, he prayed while they... His voice broke into coughing. Dark spit flecked his lips. Cole wiped it with his sleeve. Easy, just breathe. The sound of hooves struck rock above the cut. Pike had tracked them fast. Cole stood, Colt in hand, scanning the overhang and the cut's angles. There were only two ways out, back into the trees or deeper into the trench where the old mine tunnel collapsed into darkness. Harlan's voice shook. We can't go in there. It's dead air. People suffocate. Cole stared at the black mouth of the tunnel. Dead air. A buried boy had survived 3 days in a coffin because someone had given him air. Someone who understood tunnels, ventilation, mines. Pike's voice echoed down from above, calm again, almost amused. Mercer, you brought witnesses. That's careless. Cole raised his Colt toward the ridge, but Pike stayed out of sight. Harlan whispered, What do we do? Cole looked down at Jonah. The boy's eyes were half open, unfocused. He was slipping. Cole made the decision with a bitter taste in his mouth. We go where they won't, Cole said. Harlan stared at the tunnel. They'll just wait us out. Cole shook his head, eyes on the ridge. Not if what they're hiding is under the church and tied to that mine. Not if they're moving kids through underground routes. Pike won't risk us finding the wrong door. A shadow moved above. One rider sliding down the slope, careful, gun drawn. Cole shoved Harlan toward the tunnel. Carry him. Now! Harlan grabbed Jonah under the arms, lifted him with a grunt, and stumbled into the dark mouth. Cole backed in last, Colt up, eyes on the cut. The rider appeared at the edge, silhouette against moonlight. Cole fired once. The rider ducked back, but the shot cracked loud enough to bounce through stone, loud enough to make the whole cut ring. Pike's voice snapped, suddenly furious. Do not shoot in there, you idiot. You'll bring it down. Cole froze for half a heartbeat at that. Bring it down. Not, you'll kill them. Not, you'll waste bullets. You'll bring it down. Because the tunnel wasn't just a hole. It was part of something they needed intact. Cole stepped into the tunnel, darkness swallowing him, and the last thing he saw outside was moonlight on dust, and the ridge above crowded now with men who were afraid to fire. Dark swallowed Cole the moment he stepped past the tunnel lip, but not the kind of darkness a man could get used to. This was old darkness, stale, heavy, like it had been sitting here for years waiting for breath. Harlan's boots scraped ahead, uneven, burdened. Jonah made a soft, strangled sound, then went quiet again. Slow, Cole breathed. Keep your shoulder to the left wall. If the floor drops, it'll drop on the right. Old cuts were laid that way. How do you... Harlan started. I've slept in worse holes, Cole said, and moved in behind him, Colt in one hand, the other skimming stone to keep his bearings. Outside, Pike's men shifted above the cut, their silhouettes gone now, but their presence pressed into the tunnel mouth like a lid. Cole could still hear the faint clink of tack, a horse stamping. Nobody fired, nobody followed. They were afraid of the tunnel. That was new. A dozen paces in, the air changed, still cold but moving, barely. Not dead air. A weak draft, like someone had built a lung in the rock. Cole paused and listened. Something was ticking. Not a watch, not water. A slow, hollow tap that came and went with the draft. Harlan stopped, breathing hard. Hear that? Cole nodded. Vent flap, maybe. Or a board loose. Or, Harlan whispered. Cole didn't answer. He didn't like giving names to things you couldn't see. Names made them real. Jonah stirred in Harlan's arms, head lolling. Don't go past... His voice was a dry rasp, barely there. Cole leaned forward. Past what, Jonah? Jonah's eyelids fluttered. The rope. Harlan stiffened. What rope? Jonah's mouth worked. Across the floor. Cole's boot hovered. He lowered his hand until his fingers brushed the ground. Dust, grit, then there. A thin line, tight as wire, stretched ankle-high across the tunnel. Cole's stomach tightened. Stop! Harlan froze, Jonah sagging. Cole drew his knife and angled it toward the line. It wasn't rope. It was braided rawhide, thin and strong, anchored to a spike in the left wall and disappearing into a crack in the right. A trip. A trigger. Cole touched it with the knife tip, barely. It thrummed under tension. He scanned the floor ahead. The dust was uneven, disturbed in a wide arc, like something had swept through here recently. His gaze climbed the walls, searching for a hinged slab, a nailed board, anything that could swing. He found it. High on the right wall, a plank set into a rough frame held by old iron pins. Above it in the darkness, something heavy waited, ready to drop. Cole swallowed. "They don't want folks in here." Harlan's voice shook. "Why set traps if nobody comes?" Cole's jaw set. "Because somebody did." He crouched, slid the knife under the rawhide, and cut. The line snapped back, whispering through the air, but nothing dropped. Whatever it was had been armed to fall only if the line stayed taut and the trigger pulled. Cole eased forward and found the second line, then the third, each one crueler than the last. A simple man could set a snare. This was layered, planned, done by someone who understood that panic made you run and running made you dead. "Pike," Cole muttered. Harlan shifted Jonah higher on his shoulder, face pale in the dim. "You think he built this?" "No," Cole said. "He paid someone who did." They moved again, inch by inch. The tunnel narrowed, then widened into a low chamber where the ceiling rose enough for a man to stand straight. The stone here was blacker, the air damp, and the floor had old rail grooves worn into it, mine cart tracks, long abandoned. But abandoned didn't mean unused. Cole saw footprints in the dust, fresh, boot prints and smaller ones, a dragged line between them where something had been hauled, or someone. Harlan saw it too and made a sound that was half prayer, half sickness. Jonah's eyes opened a sliver. He stared at the tracks as if they were familiar. "They took him," Cole's throat tightened. "Elias?" Jonah's lips trembled. "Elias, down to the door." "What door?" Cole pressed. Jonah's breath rattled. "The one with the iron." Cole scanned the chamber walls. Rock, 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 then a seam, nearly invisible. A timbered frame set into stone, and at its center, a slab of iron about the size of a barn door, coated in rust and soot. Cole stepped closer. The iron wasn't old mine equipment. It had been bolted in later. Someone had sealed this passage like it mattered. He pressed his palm to the metal. Cold. Solid. Then, faintly, a vibration, a murmur beyond it, not wind, not rock shifting. Voices. Harlan's eyes went wide. "You hear that?" Cole nodded once. He backed up, took the tin canister from his pocket, and shook it. The lime inside rasped. A tool, maybe. A distraction, maybe. Or evidence if he lived long enough to show someone. He looked at Harlan. "Set Jonah down. Quiet." Harlan lowered Jonah carefully to the ground, propping him against a rock. Jonah's head sagged, but his eyes stayed open, fixed on the iron door like it held both terror and hope. Cole crouched by the door's bottom edge. There was a gap narrow as a finger. He could see nothing through it, but he could smell something. Wax smoke, stale sweat, and that coppery tang again. Blood. Cole slid his knife into the gap and pried gently. The blade scraped metal and caught on something inside. Wood. A bar. The door was barred from the other side. Harlan whispered, "We're trapped." Cole's gaze flicked behind them. The tunnel mouth was far, and Pike was above. He could wait. He could starve them out. He could send men into the tunnel with lamps and long guns if he decided the risk of collapse was worth it. Cole didn't like waiting games. He straightened and scanned the chamber for another route. Old mine cuts often had branching tunnels, ventilation shafts. He found a narrow vertical slit on the far wall where a ladder might have been once, just iron rungs embedded in stone, leading up into darkness. A shaft. Cole stepped under it and looked up. The draft was stronger here. Air flowed down, faint but steady. Harlan followed his gaze. "Up there?" Cole nodded. "If it's a vent, it might lead out. If it's a service shaft, it might lead to whatever's behind that door." "And if it collapses?" Harlan asked. Cole glanced at Jonah. The boy's chest rose and fell shallow. "Then we collapse. But we don't sit here and die polite." He holstered his Colt and began climbing, boots finding rungs by feel. The iron was cold and slick. He went slow, testing each rung before trusting it. Above, the shaft narrowed, stone pressing close, forcing him to turn his shoulders sideways. The murmur grew louder as he climbed, and with it, another sound, faint, rhythmic, singing. Not the kind you heard in saloons, not the kind men hummed at work, hymn singing. Cole's stomach knotted, a church song in a mine shaft. He climbed until his head brushed wood. He reached up and felt boards, newer than the stone, planed, nailed, a hatch. He pressed his ear to it. Words drifted down, muffled but clear enough to make the skin on his arms tighten. And though I walk through the valley, a man's voice, steady, practiced, leading others. Then a cluster of softer voices, women, maybe, or children forced to answer. The cadence was wrong, too controlled, like the prayer wasn't meant for God, it was meant for fear. Cole's jaw tightened until it hurt. He slid his knife into a seam and pried. The board creaked. Above, the singing faltered for a heartbeat, then resumed, louder, like whoever led it wanted to drown out any other sound. Cole eased the hatch a fraction more. A sliver of light spilled through the crack, lantern light, warm and flickering. He widened it just enough to see. What he saw made his breath catch hard enough to sting. A room, not a mine chamber, not a cellar like a farmer's root store. A built space under wood beams and stone, with shelves lined by jars, sacks, and tools, and chains. Iron rings bolted into posts, rope coiled on hooks. In the center stood Reverend Sutter. Cole had never seen him, but he knew him instantly. Black coat, white collar, hair combed neat, face soft enough to look kind until you saw the eyes. The eyes weren't kind. They were blank, like a man who believed his work was holy and therefore couldn't be wrong. Sutter held a Bible in one hand and a lantern in the other. In front of him, lined up like cattle, were 3 children. 2 boys and a girl, all dirty, all thin, all staring straight ahead as if looking anywhere else would bring pain. Behind them stood Mayor Caldwell and Grady Pike. Caldwell looked smaller than he had in Cole's memory from the saloon. No swagger, no joke mouth, just a man with fear in his spine pretending it was authority. Pike stood calm as stone, his right hand wrapped with a cloth where Cole's bullet had cut him. And there, half hidden behind a post, was another boy, older than Jonah, 9, maybe 10, hair the color of straw, eyes sharp in a way no child's eyes should be. Elias Turner. His wrists were bound, but not like a prisoner, like a display. Cole's grip tightened on the hatch edge. His pulse hammered in his ears. Sutter's voice floated up, soft and sure. We give thanks for obedience. We give thanks for the lesson. We give thanks that the Lord's work continues through us. Pike spoke quietly, not as prayer, as instruction. The Turner Ranch signs tonight. If they don't, we don't need the boy alive. We need the deed. Caldwell swallowed. Cole could see his throat bob. Folks'll talk if another one goes missing. Pike's smile was thin. Folks talk now. They'll talk tomorrow. Then they'll move away because they'll be afraid, because they'll have no money, because they'll have no land. Talking isn't a problem, Mayor. Talking is a symptom. Sutter turned to the children, face calm. Repeat after me. The children's lips moved, barely. Their voices were small, broken. Elias didn't speak. Sutter's eyes slid to him. The calm didn't crack, but it sharpened. Elias. Elias lifted his chin, eyes fixed on something beyond Sutter. For a heartbeat, his gaze lined up with the hatch crack, with Cole. Cole felt the boy see him, really see him. Recognition flashed, not of Cole's face, but of a chance, a way out. Elias's mouth opened, but instead of a word, he made a small clicking sound with his tongue, twice, a signal. Cole's stomach dropped. The boy had learned to signal in this dark place, which meant he'd been here long enough to need it. Sutter stepped closer, voice still gentle. We don't resist, Elias. Resistance is pride, and pride is the devil's tongue. Elias's eyes didn't waver. He made the click again, sharper, almost defiant. Pike's head turned slightly, like he'd heard something else beneath the prayer. His gaze swept the room, slow. Cole froze, pressed flat against stone, breath held so tight his ribs ached. Pike's eyes passed over the hatch area, paused a fraction too long. Caldwell shifted, uneasy. What is it? Pike didn't answer. His nostrils flared, just once, like a man smelling smoke. Was in the shaft. They'd be above. He was in the shaft. They'd be above. He spoke quietly, almost conversational. "Reverend, stop singing." Sutter blinked, surprised at the interruption, then lifted a hand. The children fell silent immediately. The sudden quiet was worse than the hymn. In it, every sound became a threat. Pike listened. Cole felt sweat run down his spine and turn cold. Below, in the mine chamber, Harlan's voice floated up faintly, uncontrolled, a whisper that was still too loud in that hush. "Cole!" Pike's head snapped. His eyes lifted, locking on the hatch location with perfect certainty. Cole moved on instinct. He shoved the hatch up hard, not quietly now, and surged through. He dropped into the cellar feet first, hitting the dirt floor with a jolt that shot pain up his legs. He came up with his Colt already drawn. The children screamed. Caldwell stumbled back, face going white. Sutter gasped like Cole had fired in a sanctuary. Pike didn't flinch. He drew with his left hand, fast despite the wrapped right, and fired. Cole dove behind a post. The shot tore into wood, splinters spraying his cheek. He fired back once, aiming for Pike's chest. Pike twisted aside, the bullet grazing his shoulder, punching through his coat. Caldwell yelped and dropped to one knee, hands up. "Mercer! Mercer, don't!" Cole barked. "Shut up!" Sutter stepped between Cole and the children, palms out, voice high and pleading, the first real emotion in him. "This is God's house!" Cole snapped. "This ain't God's anything!" Pike moved sideways, using a shelf as cover, eyes cold as river stones. "You should have stayed a shovel." Cole's gaze found Elias behind the post. The boy's eyes were locked on Cole, fierce. Cole shouted, "Elias, get down!" Elias dropped instantly, flattening to the floor like he'd practiced. Pike fired again. The lantern on Sutter's shelf shattered, flame licking spilled oil. Light flared bright, then began to crawl. Smoke thickened, fast. Cole's mind raced. Fire in a cellar under a church meant panic above, attention, chaos, exactly what Pike didn't want. Pike's eyes flicked to the growing flame and hardened. "Reverend, put it out." Sutter turned toward the fire like a man obeying without thinking. Caldwell crawled toward the stairs, scrambling. "I didn't want this, Mercer. I swear." Cole aimed his Colt at Caldwell's back. "You paid for it." Caldwell froze, shaking. Pike used that heartbeat. He lunged for the stairwell, not to flee, to cut Cole off from the exit. He wanted Cole trapped below. Cole fired again. The bullet clipped the stair rail, sparks and splinters. Pike ducked and vanished up the first steps using height and cover. Cole's ears rang. Smoke bit his throat. He scanned the room. 3 children pressed against the far wall, crying silent tears, too afraid to move. Elias lay on the floor behind the post, wrists bound, watching for Cole's cue. Sutter knelt by the fire, grabbing a sack of something, flour, sand, trying to smother it, frantic now. Cole moved to Elias in 2 fast strides, keeping low. He knelt, knife out, and cut the rope around Elias's wrists. Elias didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just flexed his hands like a man freed from cuffs and ready to run. Cole grabbed his shoulder. "Can you walk?" Elias nodded once. From the stairwell, Pike's voice came down, calm in the smoke. "You can't take them, Mercer. You can't take all of them." Cole's jaw clenched. Pike was right. 3 terrified children plus Elias plus Jonah and Harlan below. Cole had 2 arms and a gun. But Cole wasn't thinking about fair. He was thinking about movement. He shouted toward the hatch opening in the floor, an access hole where the shaft ladder came up. "Harlan, bring Jonah up!" Harlan's answering shout came, strained. "He can't climb!" Cole's stomach tightened. Jonah would die down there if they waited. Pike's boots thumped above, moving. He was circling to get an angle on the hatch, to shoot down, to end it. Cole's eyes flicked to the shelves, jars, sacks, tools, a coil of rope, a barrel marked with a crude symbol, skull and lines, a warning even illiterate men understood. Cole stepped to it and yanked the lid. The smell hit him hard, sharp, chemical, stinging his eyes. Lye, soap-making lye, caustic, burn-your-skin lye. Cole's mind snapped into place. The lime canister, the lye barrel. Someone had stocked this cellar with things that erased evidence, broke down bodies, cleaned blood. It wasn't just a holding pen, it was a place to make problems disappear. Cole slammed the lid back and grabbed the rope coil. He tossed it to Elias. "Tie it to the ladder rung, fast." Elias moved like he'd been born for crisis, knotting rope with quick, sure hands. Cole turned to the three children on the wall. "You, come here, now." They hesitated, eyes huge. Cole made his voice hard because softness would get them killed. "Move!" They scrambled toward him, stumbling, hands shaking. Smoke curled along the ceiling beams. The fire was spreading now, licking up a post. Sutter coughed and backed away, face wet with tears and sweat. From above, a new sound, shouts, footsteps on church floorboards, people waking, confused, drawn by smell and crackle. Good, Cole thought. Let them come. Let them see. Pike shouted down the stairs, voice snapping. "Caldwell, stop him!" Caldwell lurched to his feet, eyes wild, and drew a small revolver from his coat with trembling hands. "Mercer, please." Cole raised his Colt. "Don't." Caldwell's hand shook worse. He glanced at Pike above, then at the children, then at Cole. He wasn't a killer. He was a coward wearing a title. But cowards still pulled triggers when cornered. Caldwell fired. The shot went wide, punching a jar off the shelf. Glass shattered, liquid splashing, kerosene or alcohol or something flammable. The fire caught it instantly. Flame whooshed across the shelf like it had been waiting. The cellar lit up in a sudden roar. Heat slammed Cole's face. The children screamed again. Cole lunged and slammed Caldwell into the post with his shoulder, knocking the revolver away. Caldwell hit the dirt hard, coughing, hands up, crying now, not with guilt, with fear. Cole didn't waste time. He grabbed two of the children by the wrists and shoved them toward the hatch. "Down the ladder. Hold the rope. Don't let go." They stared at the hole like it was a grave. Cole barked, "It's not a grave. Go!" They went one after the other, clinging to the rope Elias had tied, feet searching for rungs. Cole turned to the third child, a girl, maybe 7, face streaked with soot already, eyes glassy. She shook her head, frozen. Cole softened his voice just enough. "Look at me. You can do this. You hear me?" Her lip trembled. She nodded once, tiny. Cole lifted her and set her at the hatch edge. Elias grabbed her arm and guided her down. Elias looked back up, eyes sharp. He pointed toward the stairwell, Pike's shadow moving at the top, gun angled down. Cole shoved Elias toward the hatch. "Your turn." Elias didn't move. He shook his head once, fierce. Cole grabbed his collar. "Now." Elias's jaw tightened. He pointed again, toward Pike. Then he mouthed a word. "Jonah." Cole's chest tightened. Elias wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about the boy still below. Cole's throat burned with smoke and something worse. He nodded once. "I'll get him. Go." Elias hesitated a heartbeat, then dropped into the hatch, gripping the rope, sliding fast but controlled. Cole turned back as Pike appeared halfway down the stairs, gun in hand, face lit by fire, eyes hard. "Hero," Pike said, voice almost amused. "You'll die under a church and nobody will know why." Cole raised his Colt. Pike fired first. The bullet tore through Cole's sleeve, burning hot along his forearm. Cole grunted, shoved Payne down, and fired back. Pike ducked behind the stair rail, shot splintering wood. The fire surged again. A beam creaked overhead. Cole heard a new sound beneath the crackle, a low groan, wood under strain. The cellar was failing. Sutter stood near the far wall, face pale, eyes frantic, hands still clutching his Bible like it could save him from smoke and consequence. He looked at Cole and whispered, "Broken. You don't understand. We had to." Cole snapped, "You didn't have to do a damn thing." Pike shouted, "Mercer!" Cole backed toward the hatch, keeping his gun on the stairwell. "Harlan! Jonah!" Harlan's voice came, panicked, from below. "He's fading, Cole." Cole's mind raced. He couldn't climb down, carry Jonah up, and fight Pike at the same time, not with the cellar about to fall. He scanned the room, eyes landing on a thick chain bolted into a ceiling beam, the kind used to hoist barrels. Cole moved fast, grabbed the chain and yanked it free from its hook. It was heavy, but it moved. He hooked the chain around his waist, then around the hatch edge support, making a rough harness. He shouted down, "Tie Jonah to me under the arms, now!" Harlan didn't answer, but Cole heard frantic movement below, rope scraping, a cough. Pike stepped down another stair, gun raised, taking his time now. "You can't save them all." Cole aimed his Colt, but his hand trembled from pain and smoke. He fired anyway. The shot hit the stair rail, sparks. Pike flinched back, cursing, but didn't retreat far. Caldwell, still on the dirt, crawled toward the hatch like a rat toward a hole, eyes pleading. "Mercer, please, don't leave me." Cole kicked him back without looking. Caldwell hit the floor hard and cried out. The ceiling groaned again, louder. Dust sifted down. Above, voices on the church floor grew frantic. Someone shouted, "Fire!" Footsteps pounded. A bell began to ring, wild and uneven. Pike's eyes flicked upward at the bell sound. Annoyance, not fear. He could leave. He had men. He could disappear. But he didn't want witnesses. He took aim at the hatch. Cole saw it and moved without thinking, throwing his body between Pike's line and the opening. He fired twice, fast. The second shot hit Pike's thigh. Pike snarled and stumbled, grabbing the rail, rage flashing through his calm. He pulled. Cole clenched his teeth and braced himself. The chain around Cole's waist went suddenly taut. Weight pulled. Cole clenched his teeth and braced as Jonah's limp body was tied and lifted by Harlan's desperate effort. Cole leaned back and hauled, using the chain like a winch. Jonah's head appeared at the hatch edge, eyes rolled, mouth open, skin gray. Harlan's hands shoved up from below, helping. Cole grabbed Jonah under the arms and dragged him out, laying him on the cellar floor for half a second just to get him clear of the hole. Jonah coughed once, a wet rattle, then went limp. Cole's chest tightened. "Breathe, kid, come on." Pike's boot thumped on the stair, closer again. He was coming despite the bleeding leg. Cole grabbed Jonah, hooked an arm under him, and half dragged, half carried him toward the hatch. The fire roared behind, eating shelves now. Heat slammed Cole's back. Sutter stood frozen, staring at the flames like he was seeing hell open in his own house. He whispered, "Lord forgive." A beam above him cracked. Cole's eyes snapped up. "Move!" Sutter didn't. The beam came down in a shower of sparks and burning wood, smashing across the floor where Sutter stood. Sutter vanished under it with a sound that wasn't human. The Bible hit the dirt, edges burning. Caldwell screamed. Pike didn't even look. Cole shoved Jonah's body toward the hatch edge, calling down, "Harlan, take him!" Harlan's hands grabbed Jonah from below, pulling him down out of the smoke. Cole turned back toward the stairs just as Pike stepped into full view again. Gun raised, face twisted with fury, soot smearing his cheek. "You just killed a reverend," Pike hissed. Cole's voice came out ragged. "You killed kids." Pike aimed at Cole's head. Cole aimed back. For a heartbeat they were both still, framed by fire and smoke, two men deciding who got to walk away. Then, above them, the church floor groaned, not a creak, a deep splitting sound like a tree trunk breaking. Cole's eyes widened. The whole ceiling began to drop. Pike's gaze flicked up too late. Cole dove for the hatch, one hand reaching, fingers catching the rope, and the cellar collapsed in a roar of flame and wood and stone, swallowing the light, swallowing the air, swallowing Pike's shout mid-word. Cole hit the rope hard, hemp burning his palm as the world above him turned to thunder. Wood snapped, stone ground. Fire whooshed and vanished behind a wall of dust that punched down the shaft like a fist. He dropped, sliding, spinning, bouncing off rungs with his boots and shoulder. The rope tore through his grip until his fingers locked. Then it went slack, and he slammed into the mine chamber below, the breath driven clean out of him. Harlan hauled him away from the shaft mouth as debris rained down. "Cole, you alive?" Cole coughed air that tasted of smoke and damp rock. "Jonah." "I got him," Harlan said. Jonah lay near the rail grooves, chest rising in small, uneven pulls. Elias knelt beside him, soot on his face, eyes too hard. Cole pressed two fingers to Jonah's throat. A pulse, fast but there. "Stay with us." Above, the collapse settled into silence. The shaft was sealed now. Harlan stared up. "We're buried." Cole forced himself upright. "There's still draft. That means another way." Elias looked at the blocked shaft, then at Cole. "They use this place. They don't get trapped." "Show me." Elias shoved aside a hanging canvas that looked like junk. Cold air brushed Cole's face from a low opening. Fresh scuff marks, boot prints, dragged lines. Harlan swallowed. "Where?" "To the creek," Elias said. Cole's mind clicked. This wasn't a cellar. It was a route. "Move," Cole said. "One line. No noise." Harlan lifted Jonah. Cole handed the lantern to the smallest child and kept his Colt ready. The passage forced them to crawl in spots, shoulders scraping stone. The air grew wetter. Every few yards, Cole saw signs of regular use, flattened ledges for lanterns, nail stubs for hands, quick scratches on the wall like arrows. They reached a slatted wooden grate half hidden by reeds and mud. Beyond it, moonlight on a narrow creek. but movement crossed the water. A horse's legs. Then another. Elias barely breathed. Sometimes they wait. Cole backed them a foot into the dark and lowered the lantern. He leaned to Harlan. "Can Jonah walk?" Harlan shook his head. Jonah's lips moved, thin as thread. "Don't let him." Cole bent closer. "Who?" "Pike. He ain't alone." Jonah's eyes fixed on the slats. "In the dark. They talk through wood." Cole felt his stomach sink. The coffin mask. The voice. Outside, boots scraped in mud, slow and careful. Someone was checking the exit. Cole and Elias slid forward, flat to the stone, knife and gun ready. A shadow blocked the moonlight. Fingers tested the grate. It lifted a fraction. Elias surged and caught the wrist. Cole grabbed the other arm and yanked. A rider's face dropped into view, mouth opening to shout. Cole slammed the knife hilt into his throat. The shout died into a wet choke. Elias hauled, and the man toppled into the tunnel. Cole twisted the blade under his ear. The body went limp. Outside, a voice called, sharp. "Rusk?" Another answered, uneasy. "He was right here." A third voice joined, flat, calm, and poisonous. "He isn't anymore." Pike. Lantern light flared at the grate, bright and sudden. Cole saw Pike's boot inches away, and beside it a taller shape that didn't shift like a man. Jonah trembled in Harlan's arms, eyes wide. Pike spoke softly. "Mercer, you keep proving you're alive." The light shifted, and through the slats, Cole saw the wooden mask again, held up like a badge. The hollow eyes stared into the tunnel. Then the mask's mouth spoke, not Pike's voice. "You opened it," it rasped. "Now you belong to it." Elias went pale. Harlan mouthed, "What is that?" Pike's voice returned, calm. "They like bargains. Give me Elias and Jonah. The others crawl out and run. You keep breathing." Cole's grip on the Colt turned white. He felt the tin canister of lime in his pocket and made a thin, desperate plan. He leaned to Harlan. "When I move, you go back. Deep. Don't stop." Harlan's jaw clenched. Cole took one breath, then lunged and slammed the grate up, blasting it open, and threw the canister straight into the lantern light. The lid popped mid-air. White powder burst like a ghost, filling Pike's face and the reeds. Men coughed and cursed. Cole dove into the creek so the water swallowed his outline. Guns barked into the night, bullets chewing mud and water. Cole came up on the far bank, soaked and shaking, and ran along the creek line into the trees, alone, because behind him, in the tunnel, he heard Jonah's thin scream start, cut off, and then the sound of something dragging in the dark. Cole ran until his lungs tore, creek water freezing in his boots. He forced himself not to look back, but the sound behind him, dragging in a tight space, followed like a chain. He stopped under a bend of willows and listened. No hooves, no shouts, only the creek and, far off, a bell clanging wrong, the church bell. Through the trees, an orange pulse lit the low clouds. The fire had found the church. Good, he thought. Let the whole town wake up. He cut toward the back alleys, keeping low. He needed a horse and a voice loud enough to make Pike careful. He found Finn near the livery fence, face cut and eyes huge. "You're alive," Finn whispered. "So are they," Cole said. "Listen, run to Sheriff Madsen. Tell him you saw Caldwell and Pike in the church cellar with children. Tell him there's an exit to the creek behind the willows. Say it were folks here." Finn swallowed. "He'll call me a liar." "Then make him prove you wrong," Cole snapped. "Go!" Finn ran. Cole grabbed his mare from the stall, threw a blanket and cinched the girth fast, then led her out and looped back toward the creek line, staying away from the churchyard where people swarmed with buckets. At the willows, lantern light bobbed on the far bank. 2 riders, one limping, Pike. They dragged small bundles from the reeds, children, limp with cold and fear. Cole counted in the sway, 3, not all. Pike crouched by the nearest and tipped the face up into the lantern. Pale hair, Elias. Pike's fingers tightened on the boy's collar. "Where's Jonah Turner?" Pike asked, voice low and sharp. Elias stared back, hate steady. Cole rose from the shadow of the willows and leveled his Colt across the water. "Put him down!" Both riders spun. Pike froze, then smiled like he'd been expecting Cole to crawl out of the dirt forever. His thigh was wrapped, bleeding through. "Mercer," Pike said softly, "you keep disappointing Graves." Cole stepped into the shallow water, mud sucking at his boots. "Call your men off." Pike glanced toward the glow over town. "The town's awake." Good, Cole said. That means witnesses. Pike's eyes narrowed. Witnesses can be bought. Not tonight. Pike's hand slid toward his holster, slow. Cole's finger tightened. Pike stopped and laughed once. You think you're saving them. You're delaying paper. Behind Pike, reeds parted without a lantern. A third shape rose on the far bank, taller, perfectly still. The rider beside Pike saw it and went pale. Sir, the rider whispered. The lantern light caught something pale and smooth, like a face with no features. Then it vanished again into reeds. A low rasp drifted across the creek, not carried by any mouth Cole could see. You opened it. Elias flinched, eyes flicking to the dark. Pike's jaw tightened. He grabbed Elias and jerked him in front of his own chest like a shield. Shoot, Mercer. Go on. Put your bullet through a child first. Cole's breath caught. His arm trembled. From the ridge, boots pounded and voices rose. Men running, angry, awake. Sheriff Madsen's shout cut through the night. Pike, drop the gun! Finn had made it loud. Pike's eyes snapped toward the ridge, calculation flickering. He shoved Elias down into the mud and drew. Cole fired. The shot cracked and Pike jolted, not hit clean. Cole saw the muzzle dip and the bullet tear cloth instead of bone. Pike fired back. The slug slapped the water and sprayed Cole's face. Cole waded forward anyway, keeping low. On the ridge, lanterns multiplied as men ran down with rifles. Madsen slid to the bank with deputies, guns up. Don't let him run! Pike limped into the reeds, one hand on his thigh, the other steadying his revolver. He barked, Take the children! A rider grabbed 2 bundles and dragged them toward higher ground. Elias tried to crawl, but Pike caught his ankle and yanked him back. Cole raised his Colt again, 1 round left. He aimed at Pike's head. Pike saw it and smiled. Do it, and watch what steps out after. The reeds behind Pike parted. A tall shape rose, perfectly still. Lantern light slid up it and found no eyes, no mouth, only pale blankness like stretched hide. Men on the ridge shouted, then faltered. Madsen swore. Holy! The blank face tilted as if listening. A rasp drifted from nowhere, right behind Pike. Bargain! Pike's smile collapsed into fear. He shoved Elias away hard and the boy skidded through mud toward Cole. Cole lunged, hooked him under the arm, and hauled him close. Run, Cole hissed. To the sheriff! Elias sprinted through the shallows. Pike backed deeper into reeds, voice sharp now. No more. We're done. The tall thing moved, faster than it should have. Reeds bowed as if something heavy passed without touching water. Pike fired wild into the dark. Then Pike screamed. One short cut-off sound, and the reeds closed as if they'd swallowed him. The creek kept running like nothing had happened. Cole stood in the water, Colt empty, Elias safe, staring at the spot, waiting for proof. Behind him, Harlan burst from the brush with Jonah in his arms and the other children clinging to his coat, coughing and crying. They were alive, but Jonah's eyes searched the reeds and his whisper came out like frost. It's hungry. Not like a man, ever. Something pale rose again between the willows, close enough now that Cole smelled wet earth and cold rot, and it whispered into the night. You still owe. Cole didn't move, not because he was brave, but because the creek had gone too quiet, like even the water was holding its breath. You still owe. The whisper seemed to come from the reeds, from the mud, from the blank face itself, and from inside Cole's skull all at once. Sheriff Madsen stood on the bank with his rifle half raised, eyes fixed, lips moving as if he was trying to remember a prayer and finding only dust. Finn clutched a deputy's coat, shaking. Harlan staggered up behind Cole, Jonah limp in his arms. The other children huddled close to Harlan's legs, crying into their sleeves, too afraid to look at the willows again. Elias didn't cry. He stared at the reeds like a boy staring at a snake hole, measuring how fast he'd have to run. Cole stepped backward through the shallows until his boots hit the bank. He put himself between the thing and the children, empty Colt still in his hand like a lie. Madsen found his voice. Mercer. What in God's name is that? Cole's throat was raw. Not God. The pale shape drifted forward a hand's span. Reeds bent without sound. No splash, no breath. Just presence. A deputy fired. The rifle crack split the night and echoed off the valley, and every man flinched except the thing. The bullet tore through the reeds and into the darkness behind, and nothing fell. The blank face didn't even turn. Then the whisper came again, closer, softer. Noise makes it hungry. Madsen swore and yanked the deputy's barrel down. Hold your fire! Hold it! Cole's eyes stayed on the reeds. We don't bargain, he said, not to the men, but to the thing. The blank face tilted, slow, like it was amused. Bargains happen, it rasped, with or without words. Jonah stirred, head rolling against Harlan's shoulder. His eyes fluttered open and locked onto Cole. He swallowed, pain on his face. It likes names, Jonah whispered. Cole's spine tightened. How do you know? Jonah's lips barely moved. Sutter made us say them, over and over. Your name, Pikes, Caldwell's, the land, the river, the dead. Elias's jaw clenched. They made Elias a dead name, he said, voice flat, so it would listen to the wrong one. Cole's stomach turned. That was why the marker read, Elias Turner, a decoy for whatever listened in the dark. Madsen stared from boy to Cole. Preacher Sutter is dead? Buried under his own floor, Cole said. A murmur rippled through the deputies. Fear, anger, disbelief, all of it mixing like bad whiskey. The blank face drifted another inch. The air around the willows grew colder, and the lantern flames along the bank dipped as if a breath had passed over them. Cole lifted his empty Colt and tossed it into the creek. It splashed loud, and every man's nerves jumped. The whisper turned sharp. You throw away iron, you keep debt. Cole kept his hands open. Tell me what you want. Madsen hissed. Mercer. Cole didn't look away. You said bargain. Fine, speak it. The reeds quivered like a living thing. For the first time, the blank face moved with intent, sliding toward the bank until it was just beyond the waterline, close enough that Cole could see the surface wasn't skin at all. It was something like dried hide stretched over a frame, too smooth, too pale, faint lines running through it like seams. You opened, it whispered. You pulled breath back. You broke the seal. Cole's mind flashed to the coffin lid, the hand shooting up, the voice from the mask. So you were in there. In the dark, it rasped. In the wood, in the earth, waiting. Madsen's voice shook. This is witchery. Elias snapped. It's theft. They fed it children. The blank face turned a fraction toward Elias. The lantern light slid off it without catching an eye. Food, it said. Names, fear, time. Cole felt his stomach drop at the clarity of it. Pike hadn't just used terror to buy land. He'd used something beneath the valley to make terror grow teeth. Cole spoke carefully. Pike is gone. Caldwell will hang. The church is burning. No more children down there. No more names. The thing was still a beat too long. Then the whisper came like cold fingers on his neck. There were names before Pike. Harlan's arms tightened around Jonah. What does it mean? Jonah's voice was a breath. Old mining men. They dug too deep. Finn whispered, My pa said folks vanished in the cut when he was little. Cole stared into the reeds and understood why Pike feared collapse. This tunnel network wasn't just a route. It was a mouth. Madsen swallowed hard. What do you want now? The blank face drifted, and the reeds parted enough to show the darkness behind it. Not empty darkness, depth, like a hole that didn't end where it should. Mercer, it whispered. He opened and lived. He carries the break. Cole's chest tightened. You want me? You owe, it said, a life for the life you pulled up. Elias stepped forward before anyone could stop him. Take me instead. Cole caught Elias by the collar and yanked him back. No. The thing's whisper turned almost gentle. He offers. A clean bargain. Cole's hands shook with sudden fury. You don't get to call it clean. Madsen raised his rifle again, voice hoarse. We can burn the willows, smoke it out. The blank face tilted and the lantern flames dipped again. Fire feeds air, it whispered. Air feeds me. Cole felt the men around him waver. They wanted a simple enemy. Flesh, blood, a target. This wasn't that. He looked at Jonah. If it likes names, we stop giving them. Jonah's eyes widened slightly. It still knows. Then we confuse it, Cole said. He turned to Madsen without taking his gaze off the reeds. Bring a rope. 2 men with steady hands, and nobody says a name again. Not yours, not mine, not theirs, not even God's, understand? Madsen hesitated, then barked, Rope, now! A deputy ran, fumbling a coil from his saddle. Cole crouched and scooped mud from the bank, thick and cold, and smeared it across his throat, over the rope burn marks he'd gotten in the cellar smoke, then across Elias's wrists, Jonah's neck, the children's faces. Harlan stared, confused. "Cover the skin," Cole said. "Hide the marks, hide the story." Elias caught on fast and smeared mud on his own cheeks, eyes locked on the reeds. The rope arrived. Cole took it and looped it low, wide, like a lasso made for something that didn't breathe. He stepped forward alone until his boots were at the waterline again. The blank face didn't move back. Cole swung the rope, slow, steady, making no sound with his mouth, only with the rope cutting air. He cast it. The loop sailed and dropped over the pale shape's upper body like a collar. For the first time, the reeds thrashed, not in anger, in surprise. The whisper sharpened. "No iron, no name, trick." Cole yanked. The rope tightened, biting into something that wasn't flesh. The surface dented like hard leather. The thing surged backward into the reeds with sudden force, and Cole went with it, dragged a step, boots sliding in mud. 2 deputies grabbed the rope behind him and braced, teeth clenched. The reeds bowed, and the darkness behind the blank face opened wider, like a mouth forced open. A smell rolled out, wet earth, old smoke, and something like the inside of a coffin that had never been empty. Cole's vision tunneled. He felt it pulling at his thoughts, not his body, like hands rifling through a drawer. Images flashed, a saloon in Kansas, blood on boards, a woman's face, a child's grave he'd dug years ago. The whisper coiled around his mind. "You know how to bury." Cole gritted his teeth so hard his jaw ached. He planted his heel and pulled until his back screamed. The blank face lurched, half out of the reeds now, and for a heartbeat the lantern light caught what was behind it. Not a body, but a column of shadow threaded with pale strips, like roots wrapped around something that should have been bone. Men cursed. One deputy vomited. Madsen shouted, "Hold!" Cole shoved the rope toward the deputies. He grabbed a lantern from the ground, tore the glass off with his thumb, and flung the oil-soaked cloth straight into the reeds where the shadow thickened. Flame blossomed, bright and hungry. The reeds lit fast, crackling, and the air whooshed as fire ate oxygen. The blank face snapped toward the flame, not fear, rage. The whisper turned into a low, grinding sound that wasn't a word. The rope jerked violently. A deputy lost footing and was yanked toward the creek. Madsen grabbed his belt and hauled him back. Cole staggered, eyes watering from smoke. He saw the shadow behind the face retract, the mouth narrowing as the reeds burned, as if the fire wasn't feeding it the way Madsen thought. It was sealing it. Jonah's voice cut through, thin but urgent. "Don't let it touch the rope." "It climbs." Cole looked and saw pale strips sliding along the rope toward the men, inching like wet worms. "Drop it," Cole roared. The deputies let go. The rope snapped into the reeds, and the pale strips vanished with it, dragged back into the burning thicket. For a second, everything held, fire roaring, men panting, children sobbing into mud. Then the creek water beside the reeds began to boil, not from heat, from movement beneath, as if something enormous rolled under the surface without surfacing. The blank face lifted one last time, half burned, edges blackening, and the whisper came out clear as a knife. "Debt travels." Cole's breath caught, because the voice wasn't in the reeds anymore. It was right behind him. Cole spun. The lantern light on the bank showed only men, mud, and wide eyes, yet the air behind his ear felt colder than the creek. Finn pointed, shaking, at the ground near Cole's boots. In the wet mud, a track sank in deep, long-toed, wrong-shaped, as if something had stepped out and decided to follow. Cole opened his mouth to warn them, but the whisper slid across every throat at once. "Walk. Walk!" The word didn't come from one mouth. It slid out of the night itself, using every man's fear as a tongue. Sheriff Madsen's deputies stiffened, eyes darting, rifles wavering as if they suddenly weighed 100 pounds. Finn backed away, boots sucking in the mud. It's right there," he whispered, pointing at the track near Cole's heel. Cole stared down. The print was too deep for its size, long-toed, angled wrong, pressed into wet earth like something had stepped out of the creek and decided gravity belonged to it. The willows crackled behind them, reeds burning down to black ribs. Smoke streamed low across the bank, making lantern light smear and wobble. For a heartbeat, Cole thought the fire would be enough. that they'd sealed the mouth and starved whatever listened for names. Then the whisper spoke again, closer, softer, like breath against skin. "Walk to the water!" Madsen's jaw tightened. He forced a shout through clenched teeth. "Nobody moves! You hear me? Nobody!" A deputy beside him took one step forward anyway, eyes glassy, rifle hanging limp. Another followed, then another, boots dragging like they were being pulled by strings. Cole grabbed the nearest man's collar and jerked him back. The deputy blinked hard, as if waking, then tried to step forward again with a sob. "It's in their heads," Harlan rasped, clutching Jonah tighter. "It's pulling." Jonah's face was gray, but his eyes were sharp now, tracking the men drifting toward the creek. "It can't pull everyone," he whispered. "It pulls the ones who listen." "How do we stop listening?" Finn choked. Cole looked at the children, Elias and the others, huddled behind Harlan. Their hands were over their ears, but their eyes were on Cole, waiting for a grown man to do something that made sense. Cole's mind snapped to the cellar, to Sutter leading hymns like a leash, a rhythm, a sound to drown the other sound. He turned to Madsen. "Get them shouting. Not names, just noise. Keep it steady." Madsen stared at him like Cole had lost his mind. Another deputy stepped toward the water, jaw slack, and Madsen's fear turned to anger. He grabbed the man's shoulder and shook him. "Sing, you idiot! Yell! Anything!" The deputy's mouth opened, and a ragged shout burst out, wordless, ugly, alive. It broke the spell for a second. The man blinked and staggered back. "Again!" Madsen barked. More voices joined, shouts, curses, breathy cries. The bank filled with human sound, rough and uneven. The men who'd been drifting slowed, confused, shaking as if the command had been a dream. The whisper hissed, irritated. "Quiet!" Cole stepped forward between the willows and the water, and he shouted too, not a name, not a prayer, just a barked, blunt sound that forced air out of his lungs and left nothing for the whisper to ride. It helped. The cold pressure behind his ear eased a fraction, but the track at his boots deepened. Another print sank beside it, then a third, appearing as if the mud remembered how to hold a foot that wasn't there. Finn made a strangled sound. "It's walking." Cole's eyes lifted, scanning the bank. Lantern light showed only smoke and men and reeds, yet the mud recorded steps and the air carried a damp, coffin-cold presence moving closer. Jonah whispered, "Don't let it get among you." Elias suddenly pointed toward the burned reeds. In the blackened tangle, something pale lay half-revealed, slick with soot, like a strip of hide torn from the blank face. It twitched, then it slid, inching across the mud toward the nearest deputy's boot. Cole lunged and stomped it hard. Under his heel it didn't crunch like bone, it squelched like wet leather. The strip wriggled, then went still. A low vibration rolled through the ground like distant thunder, and the creek surface shivered. Harlan's voice shook. "It's not trapped, it's spread." Cole's jaw tightened. Pike's scream in the reeds replayed in his mind, cut short. Pike had thought he could bargain. He'd thought he could point the hunger at others. If Pike was gone, the hunger hadn't disappeared. It had changed targets. Cole looked at Madsen. "Where's Caldwell?" Madsen swallowed. "At the church. My men have him, if he lives." "Bring him," Cole said. Madsen blinked. "What?" "Bring him here," Cole repeated, louder over the shouting. "Now!" Madsen hesitated, then snapped to a deputy. "You, run. Get Caldwell, fast." The deputy sprinted toward town, lantern bobbing. The whisper slid along the bank again, searching for a quiet crack to slip into. "Walk." Two deputies stopped shouting at the same time, as if their throats had suddenly filled with ice. Their eyes glazed, and they took one step toward the creek. Cole shoved one back with his shoulder. Finn shoved the other, crying out wordless noise through clenched teeth. The men stumbled, then began shouting again, terrified of their own silence. Then hoofbeats approached from town, fast, sloppy, panicked. A rider burst through the smoke, the deputy returning, hauling Mayor Caldwell across the saddle like a sack. Caldwell's face was streaked with soot and tears, cuffs on his wrists, coat half burned. He hit the ground hard. Madsen dismounted and shoved him forward with a rifle barrel. "There, now what?" Caldwell looked up at the bank full of armed men and crying children and burning reeds. His eyes went wide. "What is this? Mercer, I didn't—" The whisper came immediately, sharp and pleased. "Deader." Caldwell froze. "Who said that?" The mud beside Caldwell's boots sank in with a fresh print, deeper than the others, as if whatever walked unseen had stepped close to taste him. Caldwell's breath hitched. No, please, I paid them. Cole crouched to Caldwell's level and spoke low, forcing calm. You paid Pike. You paid Sutter. You paid for kids to be buried and dragged. You hear it now? Caldwell's eyes darted to the creek. I just wanted the town to live. They said the railroad would come. They said it would save us. Madsen spat. You sold children for a promise. Caldwell shook violently. They said the preacher could keep it fed. They said it was old and it only needed a little. A little? Elias snapped, voice cracking. My brother! Caldwell flinched like struck. I didn't know it would be yours. I didn't know it would be any. The whisper pressed in, almost tender. Walk! Caldwell's body jerked. His head turned toward the creek like a compass needle snapping north. He tried to resist, jaw trembling, but his boots slid in the mud, inching toward the waterline. Madsen grabbed his cuffs and hauled back. Fight it, you coward! Caldwell sobbed. I can't! Cole stepped behind Caldwell, planted his own boots, and took the cuffs too. Everybody shout! Now! Keep it up! The men shouted harder, raw throats tearing. The sound filled the bank like wind. It didn't stop Caldwell from moving. His knees buckled, but his body kept leaning, pulled by something that didn't use ropes. His eyes were wide, wet, fixed on the creek like it promised relief. Jonah whispered, It doesn't pull with strength. It pulls with wanting. Cole leaned close to Caldwell's ear. Tell it no. Caldwell choked a laugh that became a sob. How? It's inside me. Cole's gaze flicked to the burned reeds, to the boiling shiver in the creek. He felt the presence now in the mud, in the air, in the gaps between shouts. He made his choice. Cole unhooked his knife and cut Caldwell's cuffs free. Madsen grabbed for him. Are you insane? Cole shoved Madsen back with his shoulder. Keep your men from going quiet. That's your job. Caldwell lurched forward, suddenly unrestrained, feet sliding faster toward the water. He tried to turn back, terror finally breaking the pull for a heartbeat. Mercer, please. Cole stared him down. Walk. Caldwell's mouth opened. The command hit him like a whip, and he stumbled forward again, drawn by the same word that had been using everyone else. He reached the waterline and stepped into the creek, pants soaking, body shaking. The creek darkened around his legs as if mud rose to meet him. Caldwell screamed, I'll sign! I'll confess! The water bulged beside him. Something moved under the surface, broad and slow, and the reeds on both banks bent as if a heavy body passed between them without breaking water. Caldwell's scream turned into a gurgle. He vanished downward, not yanked like a drowning man, but folded into the creek as if the water had opened a seam. For a heartbeat, only ripples remained. Then Caldwell surfaced once, face up, eyes wide, mouth working soundlessly. His hands clawed at nothing. The water around his throat went black. A whisper rose from the creek itself, satisfied. Paid. The pressure behind Cole's ear eased. The mud prints stopped appearing. Lantern flames steadied. Men on the bank fell into stunned silence, then remembered Cole's warning and forced themselves to keep shouting, softer now, shakier, but still sound. Madsen stared at the creek, face gray. Jesus, Cole didn't answer. He watched the ripples fade until the creek ran clean again, as if it had never swallowed a mare. Elias gripped Cole's sleeve, voice low. Is it over? Jonah's eyes stayed on the water. For now, he whispered, it don't die. It just eats what's owed. Finn swallowed hard. And what's owed now? Cole felt the cold shift, not gone, just moved back into the roots, into the mine, into the valley that had been dug too deep long before Pike arrived. He looked toward town where the church still burned, where people would soon find bodies in chains and ash. He looked at the children, mud-smeared and shaking, alive. But the valley stayed cold, like it remembered. Then, from downstream, a single splash echoed, heavy, deliberate, followed by the faint drag of something moving through water against the current, and a whisper that wasn't satisfied at all. Still, Cole didn't sleep. None of them did. They holed up in the livery's back tack room, the only place in Rattlesnake Crossing that smelled more like leather than fear. Sheriff Madsen posted 2 deputies at the door and made the rest of his men pace the street like the town was at war with the night. Outside, the church burned down to its bones. By dawn, there was nothing left but black posts and a chimney that leaned like a drunk. Folks stood in the frost and stared at the ash without talking, because talking meant admitting they'd been living beside chains and prayers that weren't meant for God. Inside the tack room, Harlan sat on a feed crate with his head in his hands. Finn perched on a barrel, cheeks raw, eyes fixed on the floor like he expected it to open. The 3 rescued children huddled together under blankets, shaking whenever the wind hit the boards. Jonah lay on a bedroll near the stove, breathing shallow, face slick with sweat. Elias sat beside him, back against the wall, awake in a way that didn't look like a child. He watched the door, watched Cole, watched the shadows. Cole sat on a saddle stand, cleaning his knife with slow, careful strokes. His forearm wound burned where Pike's bullet had torn him, but he didn't dress it yet. He wanted to feel it. He wanted proof he was still made of flesh and not mud and debt. Sheriff Madsen came in around first light, soot on his coat, eyes red. "We found the cellar," Madsen said. His voice was stripped down. "What didn't burn? It's there. Rings in the posts, rope, barrels, lye. I got men puking in the street." Cole didn't look up. "You find Pike?" Madsen shook his head once. "No body." Elias's fingers tightened on Jonah's blanket. "He's gone." Madsen looked at the boy, then away. "Caldwell's gone too. Creek took him. Half the town saw it. Half the town is calling it the devil. Other half is calling it justice." Cole finally met Madsen's gaze. "You can't hang the Creek." Madsen's jaw flexed. "No, but I can hang a preacher's helpers and a land company man, if I can find him." Harlan lifted his head. "Land company will send another." "Let them," Cole said. "They won't like what they find." Madsen rubbed his face hard. "That's the other thing." He nodded toward the window, toward the willow line you couldn't see from here but could feel, like a bruise on the valley. "My men went down there at sunrise, to check the banks, to look for tracks." "And?" Cole asked. Madsen's eyes flicked to the children. "They found prints coming out of the mud, going toward town." Finn swallowed. It followed. Cole didn't answer. He felt the cold behind his ear again, faint but present, like a draft that didn't belong in a room with a stove. Jonah stirred on the bedroll. His lips moved, dry. Elias leaned in. "Jonah." Jonah's eyes opened a crack, unfocused. "It don't like daylight," he whispered. Cole leaned forward. "Then why prints toward town?" Jonah's breath rattled. "It don't walk, not like us. It rides, wanting." Harlan's voice shook. "What does that mean?" Jonah tried to swallow and winced. "It gets in places people look away. In silence." The tack room went quiet for half a heartbeat before everyone remembered and started breathing louder, shifting, making small noises like children afraid of a dark corner. Madsen forced his voice steady. "My men found something else, downstream." He pulled a cloth-wrapped bundle from under his arm and set it on a barrel. Cole's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Madsen unwrapped it slowly. A wooden mask. Cracked, soot-smudged, the mouth slit warped into a grin that didn't belong to any living face. Finn flinched so hard he slid off the barrel. Elias stood, fists clenched. "That was in the coffin," Madsen nodded. "Found it wedged under a root like somebody hid it." Cole stared at it, feeling his stomach tighten the same way it had on the cemetery hill. "It talked." Madsen's eyes were bloodshot. "My deputy said he heard something in the willows after we left last night, like a man whispering through cloth. He thought it was Pike." Cole's gaze stayed on the mask. "It wasn't." Jonah's voice came thin from the bedroll. "Don't let it speak," Harlan whispered. "It's just wood." Cole shook his head, slow. "Nothing's just wood anymore." Madsen swallowed. "What do we do with it?" Cole stood and took the mask in both hands. It was lighter than it should be. Dry, cold, the kind of cold that didn't come from winter. He held it close to his face and listened, stupid as it sounded. At first, nothing. Then a faint scrape, like something moving along the inside of the slit mouth. Not a voice, a preparation. Cole's fingers tightened until the wood creaked. "It's a mouthpiece," he said. Madsen stared. "For who?" Cole looked at Jonah. "For what's under the valley," Jonah's eyes opened wider, fear sharpening him awake. They used it, he rasped. Sutter would hold it up when he prayed. He'd make it answer, so folks thought God was listening. Elias's voice was flat and poisonous. It was listening. Madsen's shoulders sagged. If that thing can talk in town. Cole turned to the small stove. The coals glowed dull red. He held the mask over them, testing his own nerve. The cold behind his ear intensified. The lantern flames in the room, one on a shelf, one near the door, both dipped at the same time, though no wind touched them. Finn whimpered. Don't. Cole lowered the mask closer to the coals anyway. The slit mouth moved, not with hinges, with tension. The wood flexed like it had sinew. A whisper slid out, so soft it barely disturbed the air, but every spine in the room felt it. Mercer. Cole froze. Madsen's hand went to his gun. Harlan backed up until he hit the wall, knuckles white. Elias didn't move, but his eyes went hard enough to cut. The whisper came again, warmer now, like breath near a fire. You gave me Caldwell. Cole's throat tightened. You took him. A dry laugh came from the mask slit. Wrong because Wood shouldn't laugh. You loosened him. You cut him free. Cole's grip tightened. You said paid. Paid, the mask whispered, is not finished. Madsen raised his rifle. Shut it up. Cole snapped, no iron. Then to the mask, what do you want? The mask's grin seemed to deepen in lantern light. Names, land, a door. Cole's stomach dropped. What door? The whisper thickened, pleased. The one you sealed with fire. Elias's breath caught. The church. Cole stared at the coals, mind racing. The cellar collapsed. The church burned. But the tunnels remained. The iron door in the mine chamber, barred from the other side, that hadn't burned. They'd sealed one mouth and the valley wanted another. Jonah's voice scraped out, urgent. Don't open nothing! Madsen's face twisted. We're not opening anything. The mask whispered, almost tender. You already did. Cole felt it then. The cold draft behind his ear, sliding down his neck into his chest like water seeping into a boot. Not possession. Not yet. Something like a hook set shallow. Cole forced himself to breathe through it. If you can talk through that, he said, you can be trapped in it. The mask's whisper turned sharp. Wood rots. Cole nodded. So we burn it. He shoved the mask down onto the coals. The wood smoked immediately, black edges curling. The slit mouth opened wider, not with hinges, but with strain. A sound poured out, not a scream, not a word, but a long, wet inhale, like something trying to breathe through a throat that wasn't there. The lantern flames dipped again. The stove coals flared hot, too hot, and the room filled with a sharp chemical stink, like lye and smoke and old graves. Finn covered his ears and slid to the floor. Madsen shouted for his men at the door, voice cracking. Harlan grabbed Elias and yanked him back from the stove. Cole held the mask down with iron tongs, despite Madsen's warning, because the tongs were iron and he didn't care anymore. If iron hurt it, good. The mask writhed, edges cracking. The slit mouth spat out a whisper like a knife. You still owe. Cole's teeth clenched. For what? The whisper came out with a slow, satisfied certainty. For Pike. The room went still. Elias's eyes widened. Pike's dead. The mask's grin cracked as it burned. Not dead, bound. Cole's stomach turned. He remembered the reeds closing. Pike's scream cut off. Not eaten, taken. The whisper slid on, heavy as dirt. Bring the iron door. Bring the name you buried. Bring the boy who wasn't dead. Jonah's eyes flew open, terror sharpening him fully awake. No. Cole's grip tightened on the tongs. You want Jonah. The mask whispered. He broke the earth's sleep. Madsen's face went white. What in hell is an iron door? Jonah's voice turned frantic, weak but fierce. The door in the mine, under the cut. Don't open it. They made Elias a dead name so it would find the wrong one. Now it knows. The mask's edges collapsed inward, burning faster, as if the stove coals had suddenly become hungry. The whisper thinned but didn't weaken. Bring him, it rasped. Or I walk the town, I walk the barns, I walk the beds. Finn sobbed. Please. Cole shoved the tongs harder, crushing the burning mask into the coals until it broke into char and flakes. The whisper faltered, sputtered, but the cold behind Cole's ear didn't ease. It stayed like a promise. The mask finally fell silent, reduced to black chips. For a long moment, the only sound in the tack room was Jonah's ragged breathing and the distant crackle of the church ruins settling. Madsen stared at the stove like it might whisper again. It threatened the town. Cole nodded slowly. It doesn't need Pike to threaten anything. Elias stepped forward. His voice was steady, too steady. If Pike is bound, we can find him. Harlan stared. Why would you want to find him? Elias's eyes burned. So he doesn't come back. So he doesn't sell another child to the dark. Cole looked at Jonah, then at the other children, then at Madsen. The sheriff's face had the look of a man who'd been handed a job bigger than law. We don't open the iron door, Madsen said, more to himself than to Cole. We don't go back down there. Cole's gaze drifted to the window, to the pale light of morning that didn't feel safe. We might not have a choice. Outside, a scream rose from somewhere in town, high, sudden, cut short, then another. Madsen's head snapped up. His deputies at the door shouted, boots pounding away. Finn scrambled to his feet, shaking. That's my street. Cole grabbed his coat and knife in one motion and headed for the door. Behind him, Jonah's voice came out like a warning carved into stone. It found, quiet. Cole hit the street at a run, smoke stink still in his hair, and found the first scream had come from the barber's row. A woman stood in the doorway of the boarding house with both hands clamped over her mouth, rocking on her heels. Two men leaned into the hall, lantern held low, faces washed pale. Madsen barreled past Cole with 3 deputies. Clear the street, he shouted. Everybody out. Nobody moved fast. People were waking into horror in slow pieces, like a man waking from a fever dream. They stared at the church's black ribs in the distance, then at the boarding house, then at each other, as if waiting for someone to say it wasn't real. Cole pushed through the knot of bodies and saw the hall. A line of wet footprints ran down the boards from the back rooms to the stairwell, too deep to be a child's, too long-toed to be a man's. Mud dripped in little beads that didn't spread like water. It sat there thick, like it wanted to be remembered. At the end of the prints, in the threshold of room 7, lay a deputy on his side, eyes open, throat bruised dark. His rifle was still in his hands, but the barrel was bent, as if something had pressed it like soft tin. Madsen swore under his breath and crouched beside the body. It was you, he said, not sure who he was talking to. It came here. A thin sob came from inside the room. Cole stepped over the prints and looked in. Finn's mother sat on the floor against the bed frame, shaking so hard the mattress springs sang. Her lips were blue. Her gaze was fixed on the corner of the room where the wash basin sat. Nothing stood there, yet the basin's water trembled in tiny ripples, steady as a heartbeat. Finn shoved past Cole, face white. "Ma!" She tried to speak and only made a broken sound. Finn dropped to his knees, grabbing her shoulders, and she finally found words, whispering like the room might hear her. "It asked me to hush." Finn's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, wild, desperate, waiting for the thing to show itself so he could hate it with his eyes. Cole felt the cold draft behind his ear deepen, like a finger hooking into the notch of his skull. Madsen's deputy, a young man with freckles, lifted his rifle toward the empty corner. "Sheriff, let me—" "No iron!" Cole snapped. The freckled deputy hesitated, confused. Madsen rose slowly, eyes scanning the room. "What happened, Mrs. Barrow?" Finn's mother shook her head, tears running without blinking. "I woke and it was standing at the foot of the bed." She swallowed hard. "Not a man, not a ghost. It was like the space was thicker." The basin water rippled again. The room chilled another degree. Cole stepped forward, palms open, and forced air into his lungs without forming a name. "You want quiet," he said. "You can't have it." The floorboards creaked under nobody. The lantern flame dipped. Finn's mother squeezed her eyes shut and began to whisper a hymn without words, just the tune, trembling. It was the first smart thing anyone had done since dawn. Cole took it and built on it. He started tapping the heel of his boot, a steady beat, and motioned for the deputies in the hall to do the same. The sound spread. Boots, knuckles on wood, a rough human rhythm that filled the gaps. The basin water steadied. But the mud prints didn't. They slid, slowly, one step at a time, across the boards toward Finn. Finn jerked back, dragging his mother with him. "It's coming!" Cole moved between Finn and the prints. He grabbed the wash basin and flung the water across the floor in a broad arc. For a heartbeat, The water hung in the air like silver. Then it struck something invisible and splashed, not on boards, but on a surface that wasn't there an instant before. The water ran down an unseen curve and dripped onto the floor in a pattern that suggested shoulders, a torso, a long arm. The room erupted in shouted noise as men saw proof with their own eyes. The invisible shape recoiled, and the cold pressure in Cole's skull surged, angry. A whisper slid through the room, riding the edge of the boot taps. Door. Cole's stomach tightened. The iron door. Madsen heard it too. His face went hard. It's telling us what it wants. Cole stared at the wet outline shrinking as if it was withdrawing into the corner again. It's not asking, he said. The whisper came again, sharper, and this time the basin water shivered in answer. Bring him, Finn's mother gasped. Finn's hands clenched. Cole felt every eye turn, not to him but to the tack room across town where Jonah lay. The town didn't know Jonah's name, but the valley did. Madsen barked, back to the livery. Now, keep noise, keep it constant. They moved in a tight knot down the street, boots scuffing, men clapping hands, women crying out, children wailing. Rattlesnake Crossing turned itself into a loud, ragged animal because silence had become a weapon. At the livery, Harlan had already dragged Jonah closer to the stove, blankets piled high. Elias stood over him like a guard, knife in hand. Jonah's eyes were open now, bright with fever. It's in town, he whispered before Cole could speak. I felt its step. Cole crouched by him. How do we stop it? Jonah's lips trembled. You don't. You close what they opened. You bar the bar. Madsen's jaw worked. You mean the iron door in the mine? Jonah nodded, tiny. They opened it to make it listen. Now it wants it open all the way. Elias's voice cut in, flat. And Pike is on the other side. Harlan swallowed. If that's true, then the thing can use him. Jonah's gaze snapped to Harlan. Or it can't. That's why it wants the door. Cole stood. He looked at Madsen and saw the same thought settling. If the valley wanted the door, then keeping it shut wasn't enough. The thing had learned how to walk without it. It was already in town. Gather men, Madsen said, voice rough. Men who can keep their mouths busy and their hands steady. We go to the cut. Finn shook his head violently. You're going back down there? It'll kill you. Cole put a hand on Finn's shoulder, firm. If we stay, it kills people one room at a time. Finn's throat bobbed. He didn't argue again. They moved at noon, not because daylight made them brave, but because daylight kept folks outside, talking, moving. Madsen ordered the town into the street, chores and buckets and hammering, anything that made sound. A line of men followed Cole up to the mining cut with lanterns and coils of rope. Harlan came too, carrying Jonah on a stretcher made from a door ripped off its hinges. Elias walked beside Jonah, silent, eyes fixed forward. At the cut, the shaft opening was a crushed mess of timber and blackened stone. Smoke still seeped from it like the earth exhaling. The creek great, Cole said. We go in that way. They found it behind the willows, now burned to stumps. The creek ran clear, but the bank held new prints, long-toed, circling like a dog tracking its own tail. Madsen swallowed hard. Keep the noise. Men clapped and hummed and stomped as they pried up the grate and slid into the tunnel in groups of 3. Cole went first, lantern high, knife and revolver in his belt, ears tuned for any moment the rhythm might falter. The tunnel stank of wet ash and old iron. They crawled, then crouched, then entered the mine chamber where the rail grooves ran, and the iron door waited, black and silent. The bar on the far side was still there. Cole tested the gap with his knife, still barred. A deputy whispered, forgetting, Cole, what now? The lantern flames dipped. Cole slapped the man's shoulder and barked a wordless shout, and the others stomped harder until the chill eased. Jonah's stretcher arrived last. Harlan set him down facing the iron door. Jonah's breath came shallow, but his eyes were locked on the seam like he could see through metal. Talk to it, Madsen demanded, voice shaking. You hear it, boy? Tell it no. Jonah swallowed. It don't hear no. It hears want. Elias stepped closer to the door, hands trembling with rage he couldn't spend. Then we give it something else to want. Cole looked at the iron door and understood what the valley had been doing for decades, turning men's wants into chains, using greed and fear as handles. He pulled the lime canister from his pocket, now half empty. He shook it, listening to the rasp. Then he looked at Madsen. "We seal the seam, lime and lie. If it likes mouths, we burn them shut." Madsen stared. "Will that hold?" Cole didn't pretend certainty. "It might, or it might just slow it." Jonah's voice came weak but clear. "You got to give it back what it stole." Cole's stomach tightened. "Pike." Jonah nodded. "The door's a throat. Pike's in it. If it keeps him, it keeps a hook in the world." Harlan whispered. "You're saying we have to pull Pike out?" Elias's eyes flashed. "And then kill him." Madsen's mouth went dry. "If we open it, even a crack." The lantern flames dipped again, deeper this time, and the mine chamber grew colder, as if the iron door had breathed. A whisper seeped through the seam, faint but unmistakable, like wind through cloth. "Door." Men stiffened. The rhythm faltered. Cole stomped hard, once, twice, and shouted a harsh, wordless sound. Others followed, clapping, humming, teeth chattering. The whisper sharpened. "Bring him." Jonah's gaze slid to Cole, pleading and terrified at once. "It's already here. It's using the town. If you don't cut the hook, it'll keep walking." Cole felt the cold behind his ear tug, not like pain, like ownership. He looked at Elias, then at Finn, then at Madsen. This wasn't a duel anymore. It was a choice between one controlled opening and 100 silent rooms. Cole reached for the knife and slid it into the seam again, feeling the bar's resistance on the other side. "Everybody loud," he breathed. "Nobody says a name. If you feel your tongue go still, bite it. Pulled. Keep loud." Cole set his shoulder to the iron and listened for the smallest change in the seam. The bar on the other side was real, wood against metal, so close he could taste the sap and rot of it through the crack. Around him, men stomped, clapped, hummed through clenched teeth. It wasn't music. It was a fence built out of sound. Madsen stood with his rifle lowered, hands shaking from the effort of not raising it. Finn's lips moved in a constant stream of breath noise, like he was afraid silence might spill out of him if he stopped. Harlan kept one hand on Jonah's stretcher, the other on the lantern, eyes darting from the door to Cole's face like he was trying to read the moment he should run. Jonah watched the seam. His pupils were wide, fever-bright. Elias stood at his shoulder, jaw locked, fingers flexing as if he wanted to strangle the door itself. Cole slid the knife deeper and twisted. The iron groaned, not loud, but it made the mine chamber feel smaller, like the rock was leaning in to listen. The whisper seeped through the seam, soft as breath through cloth. "Door." Madsen's throat tightened, his clapping faltered. Cole stomped once, hard, and the men caught it, stomping back, building the rhythm again before the cold could settle into their mouths. Cole didn't look away from the seam. He reached into his pocket and pulled a small wedge of driftwood he'd grabbed from the creek passage on instinct, still damp, still smelling of mud. He pressed it into the crack and hammered it with the heel of his palm until it bit. Then he pried again. Metal complained. The seam widened, hairline to finger width. Cold rolled out. Not winter cold, grave cold, the kind that didn't belong to air. Lantern flames dipped toward blue, and a few men made strangled sounds as if their throats had tightened in sympathy. The whisper shifted, pleased. "Open!" Cole felt the tug behind his ear become a pull at the base of his tongue, like invisible fingers trying to pinch the sound right out of him. He forced himself to exhale, hard, wordless, and stomped again. Madsen grabbed the nearest deputy by the shoulder and shook him until he clapped harder, louder. Cole leaned in and peered through the widening crack. He saw darkness, but not empty darkness. Something moved beyond, slow as breathing, a faint glimmer like wet stone, and then, very faint, the scrape of nails on metal. A voice came through the seam, human and broken. "Help! Me!" Harlan flinched. Finn's eyes went wide. Elias went rigid. He didn't speak, but his whole body strained toward the sound like a dog on a chain. Cole recognized the voice from the cemetery hill, not the child's, not the mask's. Pike. Cole swallowed the sour taste rising in his throat. "Stay loud," he breathed, not to a name, just to the air, and motioned at the men to keep the rhythm as his hands moved. He slid the knife out and swapped it for the pry bar. He worked the bar into the seam and levered. The iron door shifted a fraction, then another. The bar on the far side scraped, resisting, then, unexpectedly, slid away as if something inside had moved it. The whisper flowed out, thick and eager. Bargain? The men around Cole stomped harder, but even their noise sounded distant now, as if the chamber had filled with cotton. The door cracked open the width of a man's hand. A hand shot through, not pale, not blank. A man's hand, gloved, torn at the fingers, nails ripped. It grabbed the edge and clung like drowning. Pike's voice came again, raw. "Mercer, don't close it." Cole's eyes locked onto the gap. Inside, just beyond the door, Pike's face appeared in lantern spill, cheek scraped raw, mustache smeared with blood and mud, eyes wide with something that wasn't just fear. Behind him was darkness that looked deeper than the mind should allow, darkness that shifted like a body turning in sleep. Cole didn't reach for Pike yet. He watched the shadows behind Pike's shoulder. The whisper slid around Pike's mouth as if using him as a flute. "Bring him!" Jonah's breath hitched on the stretcher. His eyes rolled back for a heartbeat, then snapped open. He whispered, thin and urgent, "Don't touch him, Bear." Elias's voice came out like flint. "Pull him out, then I cut him." Madsen's face twisted. He mouthed a silent question, then remembered and clapped hard enough to sting. Cole kept his hands on the iron. "What happened to you?" he asked Pike, careful not to say anything that felt like an offering. Pike's lips trembled. It grabbed me. It didn't eat. It kept me. It wants leverage." His eyes flicked past Cole, past the men, toward Jonah. Hunger flashed there, not his own, borrowed. "Give it the boy and it stops walking." Elias stepped forward. Cole shoved Elias back with his forearm. "Stay." Pike's gaze snapped to Cole, pleading and furious in the same breath. "You don't understand what's behind me. It's old. It was here before this town was dirt. We woke it, we fed it, now it knows the taste of daylight." "Then we put it back to sleep," Cole said. Pike laughed, a wet, cracked sound. "Sleep? You think you can lull a thing that remembers every name ever said over a grave?" Behind Pike, the darkness bulged, and a pale strip slid across the gap like a ribbon in water. It touched Pike's jaw, and Pike jerked as if stung. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Mercer, it's in my head. It's holding my tongue." Cole saw the truth in Pike's eyes then. Pike wasn't bargaining anymore. Pike was a leash. The whisper came through Pike's teeth, not his will. "Closer." One deputy's clapping slowed, his eyes glazed. Cole snapped his heel into the floor. The man jolted and clapped again, shaking. Cole nodded toward Finn without looking away from the door. Finn understood and began stamping a steadier beat, fast, relentless, dragging the others with him. Cole leaned closer to the gap and spoke to Pike like he spoke to a man stuck in a snare. "Can you step out?" Pike tried. His shoulder pushed into the crack, but his body didn't follow. Something behind him held fast. He grimaced, teeth bared. "It's got me," under the ribs, like hooks. The darkness behind Pike shifted again, and for a heartbeat, lantern light caught something pale, not a face, but a curve, like a jawbone without a skull. Jonah whispered, "It's making a throat." Harlan swallowed hard. "A throat for what?" Jonah's eyes flicked to Cole. "For the town." Cole's blood went cold. If it built a throat here, it could push itself into the valley the way smoke pushed into a cabin, every crack, every gap, every quiet room. Elias stepped up again, voice shaking with rage. "You used us. You used my brother. You used Jonah. Now you're scared?" Pike's eyes flicked to Elias, and for the first time his calm mask was gone completely. "Boy, you don't know what scared is," Elias hissed. "I know chains." The pale strip behind Pike slid forward and brushed Elias's wrist where he'd been bound before. Elias flinched, face whitening, as if the touch had reached into a memory. The whisper softened, sweet as rot. "Elias." Elias's mouth opened and no sound came. Cole grabbed Elias's shoulder and shook him hard, not speaking a name, just forcing breath back into him. Elias gasped and stumbled, then began clapping his hands against his own thighs, violent, desperate to keep from going quiet again. Madsen's eyes widened. "It knows the boy," Jonah whispered. "It knows all of us now." Cole's mind moved like a blade finding a seam. "If Pike is a leash," he muttered, "we cut the leash." Harlan's eyes went wide. "You mean Cole didn't answer. He reached into the sack of supplies Madsen's men had carried. Lime, lye, a small tin of lamp oil, rags, and a coil of fresh rope. He grabbed the rope and slid one end toward the door. Pike saw it and shook his head fast. "No, don't tie me." "Don't!" The whisper surged through him, harsh. "Yes." Cole looped the rope around Pike's wrist through the crack, fast, tight, knotting with the same hard certainty he used on saddle cinches. Pike fought it, but his strength was wrong, jerky, half his own, half pulled. Cole stepped back and nodded at two deputies to take the rope behind him. They did, hands trembling, clapping with their free palms to keep noise going. Cole took the lamp oil and soaked a rag, then wrapped it around the rope near the door, not touching the iron, just close enough. Madsen stared, understanding dawning. "You're going to burn the line." Cole nodded once. Pike's eyes went wild. "If you burn it, it'll keep me. Cole leaned close to the crack. "Then talk while you can. Tell the sheriff what you did, who else is involved, where the deeds are." Pike's mouth worked. The whisper fought him, but fear gave him strength for a moment. "Land office in St. Braddock, clerk named Halsey. They keep duplicates. Caldwell signed, others too. The Turner Ranch, the McCrae's, half this valley." The pale strip behind him tightened like a belt. Pike choked. The whisper slid out, cold. Too late. Cole lit the rag. Flame licked up, bright and hungry, and the smell of burning oil filled the chamber. The rope hissed, fibers blackening. Pike screamed, real this time, not the mask, not the reeds. His body jerked toward the crack as if the fire had yanked him, and for a heartbeat, Cole thought it might actually pull him free. The darkness behind Pike surged. A pale, root-like strand snapped around Pike's waist and yanked him backward, hard. Pike's fingers clawed at the iron edge, nails scraping. His mouth opened, and the whisper poured out louder than before, using his lungs like bellows. "Bring the boy." Jonah convulsed on the stretcher. Harlan grabbed him, trying to keep him from sitting up. Jonah's eyes rolled, then fixed on the crack, and his voice came out in a broken gasp. "It's pulling through me." Cole's stomach dropped. The thing didn't need Jonah as a sacrifice. It needed Jonah as a hinge, something living that had been in a box under dirt between worlds. The rope burned through with a sharp snap. Pike's hand vanished back into the dark. The iron door slammed inward from the other side with a boom that shook dust from the ceiling. For a heartbeat, silence threatened to fall in shock. Cole stomped hard and clapped once, loud, and the men snapped back to noise as if their lives depended on it, because now they did. From behind the iron, Pike's muffled scream turned into a wet choking sound, then cut off. The whisper seeped through the seam, quieter now, satisfied in a way that made Cole's skin crawl. "Hook. Kept." Elias's face was wet with tears he hadn't noticed falling. He didn't wipe them. He stared at the door like he wanted to bite it. Madsen's voice came out rough. "We lost him." Cole's jaw clenched. "We cut the leash. That's not the same as losing." Jonah made a sound like a sob and a laugh at once. "It's angry." The mine chamber chilled another degree. The lantern flames dipped, then steadied, then dipped again, like something was breathing on them from the other side of iron. Cole grabbed the lime and lye and began packing the seam with shaking hands, smearing the caustic paste into the crack, forcing it in with a rag until his knuckles burned. Men helped, clapping with one hand, smearing with the other. The whisper hissed, irritated. "Seal! And I walk!" Cole pressed harder, jaw locked. "You're already walking!" The iron door shuddered once, not from a man hitting it, from something leaning against it, curious, patient. Jonah's eyes went wide, staring past the door as if he could see what leaned there. His voice came out in a thin, terrified thread. "It's not on the other side anymore." Jonah's words hit the mine chamber like a dropped stone. "It's not on the other side anymore." For half a heartbeat, nobody moved. The clapping and stomping stuttered, then surged again as men remembered what silence cost. Lantern flames shivered, bending away from the iron door as if something behind them had exhaled. Cole turned slowly, paste of lime and lye still smeared across his knuckles. He didn't want to. Turning meant admitting Jonah might be right. The rail grooves on the floor ran into the darkness of the side passage like scars. The creek route they'd come through breathed cold air into the chamber, steady and damp. And somewhere in that damp, something shifted. Not a footstep, A pressure change, a thickening, like the space between two rocks had become meat. Madsen's lips moved with no sound. He forced his hands to clap louder, the slap echoing off stone. His deputies followed, faces tight, eyes darting as if looking straight at something would give it permission. Finn's breath came out in fast bursts, and he started humming a tune with no words, the same tune his mother had tried in the boarding house. It wobbled, but it was sound, and sound was a wall. Elias stood so still he looked carved. His eyes were fixed not on the iron door, but on the ceiling. Cole followed his gaze. Dust drifted down in thin streams from a crack above the mine chamber's far corner, not from collapse, from vibration, like something heavy had pressed against the rock and the rock had replied. Harlan whispered without forming names. "Where is it?" Jonah's pupils were huge. "Behind you," he rasped. The lantern flames dipped hard. Cold slid across Cole's neck, not like wind, like a hand passing behind his ear. The tug that had been living there tightened until it felt like a hook buried in muscle. Cole jerked his head away and stomped twice, hard, setting the rhythm. Men clapped in answer, louder, frantic. And then, in the far corner where the dust fell, the darkness thickened into a shape the lantern light couldn't hold. The air there looked wrong. Not shadow, not smoke. A smooth absence, as if someone had cut a human outline out of the world and left a hole. The hole leaned forward. A deputy's clapping stopped. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Cole grabbed the man's jaw and slammed his own thumb into the deputy's cheek hard enough to make him yelp. The yelp turned into a shout. The man clapped again, crying now. Madsen's eyes locked on Cole, panicked question in them. What do we do? Cole didn't have a clean answer, so he made an ugly one. He grabbed the lantern nearest and threw it straight into the wrong dark. The lantern shattered against something unseen. Oil splashed, flame caught. For a heartbeat, the fire outlined it. Not a body, a column of shadow threaded with pale strips like roots wrapped around emptiness. The pale strips writhed where flame licked them, not burning like cloth, recoiling like skin. Men screamed wordlessly, boots hammered stone. The rhythm exploded into chaos. The thing moved. It didn't step. It flowed, sliding along the floor toward the nearest warm shapes as if gravity and distance were suggestions. The flame that should have climbed it guttered, starving, as though the fire couldn't find air close enough to feed. Jonah's voice rose, sharp with terror. "Don't run! Running makes gaps!" But men ran anyway. Panic tore the sound wall into holes, and those holes felt like doors opening. The thing surged toward the biggest hole in the noise, toward a deputy who'd turned to flee and gone silent in his own throat. Cole lunged and caught the man's coat, yanking him back, forcing breath out of him in a strangled cry. The cry filled the gap. The thing hesitated, like a dog losing scent. Cole seized the moment. He shoved the deputy toward Madsen and barked, "Keep the rhythm! Keep it constant! One beat!" Finn started stamping fast, steady, the same pace he'd used when Pike's men had been close in the woods. Elias joined instantly, clapping against his thighs in a brutal metronome. Madsen forced his deputies into the beat, snarling at them like a man driving cattle through a fire. The mine chamber filled with that hard, fast rhythm. The thing didn't like it. The pale strips along its shadow body quivered. The wrong dark contracted as if the sound was squeezing it from the inside. The whisper slid out, thin and furious. "Quiet!" Cole felt the command pinch his tongue, trying to kill his breath. He bit down hard enough to taste blood and forced a raw bark out anyway. Just noise. Jonah convulsed on the stretcher as if the whisper had grabbed him by the spine. Harlan held him down, terrified. Jonah gasped. "It's using me!" Cole's eyes snapped to Jonah. "How?" Jonah's gaze flicked to the iron door seam they'd sealed. "I was in the box, under dirt, half in, half out. It can pull through that." The thing surged again, not toward the men now, but toward Jonah. The lantern flame on the floor bent toward Jonah too, like the air itself leaned. Elias stepped in front of Jonah without hesitation, knife in his hand. His voice came out with effort, forced into sound. "No." The whisper softened, sweet as rot. "Elias." Elias's jaw clenched. He started stamping harder, faster, refusing silence. Tears streaked down his soot-smeared cheeks, but his feet kept time. Cole grabbed a sack of lime and hurled it at the thing. The sack burst in a white cloud that hung in the air, choking and bright. The cloud struck the wrong dark and stuck, clinging as if to wet skin. Pale strips writhed beneath the powder, and for the first time the shape looked slowed, irritated. Cole shouted over the rhythm, "Lie! Now!" Madsen's men shoved forward, tossing handfuls of lye and lime like they were feeding a fire with poison. The powder hit, stuck, and began to hiss where it met the pale strips, not burning, but reacting, eating at something that shouldn't exist. The whisper sharpened into a grinding sound that made teeth ache. The thing recoiled, sliding backward toward the side passage as if retreating to thicker dark. Cole didn't let it. He grabbed the oil tin and flung it after the powder cloud, then snapped a match and tossed it. Flame bloomed across the dusted shape. This time, the fire held. The powder gave it something to bite, some surface to cling to. The wrong dark shuddered, pale strips writhing, and the whisper turned into a wet inhale, hungry and angry at once. "Det!" Jonah screamed, the sound thin but human. "It wants the hinge! It wants me to open!" Cole's gut tightened. The creature wasn't trying to kill Jonah, it was trying to use him like a handle. If it could pull Jonah into its dark, it could pull the valley wider. Cole moved fast. He grabbed Jonah's stretcher and dragged it backward along the rail grooves, away from the side passage, away from the moving dark, toward the creek tunnel. Harlan stumbled with him, gripping the stretcher's handles. Madsen shouted and forced his men to keep stamping and clapping, forming a moving wall of sound as they backed with Cole. Finn's humming grew louder, steadier, a rope thrown across panic. Elias stayed near Jonah's head, eyes locked on the thing through the firelight and powder haze. The thing surged one more time, a lunge through flame that should have stopped it. For a heartbeat, it looked like it would reach Jonah anyway. Cole threw himself between, arms spread, and felt the cold hit him like a slap across the mind. Images flashed, dirt, nails, a coffin lid, a child's hand, his own hands digging, his own hands pulling. The whisper slid directly into his skull, intimate. "You opened." Cole's throat tightened. His mouth tried to close. His breath tried to stop. He bit his own tongue hard and forced a ragged shout out, pain and sound together, and the rhythm behind him caught it, amplified it, kept it from dying. The thing faltered. Pale strips slapped against the air near Cole's chest, not touching, but close enough to raise gooseflesh. He could feel it searching for a quiet place inside him. Cole grabbed a fistful of lime paste from the door seam, burning his skin, and smeared it across his own throat and jaw like a man marking himself with mud. The caustic sting cut through the cold hook behind his ear. The whisper recoiled, offended. "Rot!" Cole spat blood and lime dust. Then "rot!" he rasped and stamped twice so hard his heel hurt. The men backed toward the creek tunnel mouth. The passage there was narrower, lower, and damp, harder for the thing to spread into. Cole could feel it didn't like the tightness. It liked open rooms, quiet rooms. The thing slid along the mine chamber's far wall, avoiding the brightest flame, circling. It wasn't fleeing. It was thinking, and it was patient. Madsen's voice cracked. "We can't fight it like this forever." Jonah's eyes rolled back, then snapped open again. "No," he whispered. "You don't fight it. You starve it." Finn's voice shook. "How?" Jonah struggled for breath. "It eats. Quiet. It eats. Names. Stop giving both." Elias's eyes flicked to Jonah. "It still knows." Jonah's lips trembled. "Then we make it forget who it's hunting." Cole's mind moved fast. "You said hinge." Jonah nodded weakly. "I'm the hinge. If I die, right, it closes." Harlan's face went white. He shook his head hard. No, you're not saying that." Jonah's gaze held Cole's, raw and steady. "If I live, it keeps pulling. It'll keep walking rooms until the valley's quiet forever." Elias grabbed Jonah's blanket, voice breaking. "Don't." Jonah's eyes filled. "I'm tired, Eli." Elias flinched at the nickname, like it hurt more than any chain. Cole felt something in his chest tear and settle into place at the same time. He'd dug a child's grave once. He'd believed the ground could swallow grief and keep it. It hadn't. The thing in the mine chamber shifted again, feeling their hesitation like scent. The whisper seeped through the stomps, trying to thin them. "Bring him!" One deputy's clapping slowed. Another man's humming faltered. The creature leaned toward the sound gap like a starving dog toward meat. Cole snapped, "Louder!" and the men obeyed, fear turning to fury, fury turning to noise. Cole crouched beside Jonah. "If there's another way, tell me." Jonah's lips barely moved. "There's a cap. In the creek tunnel, old mining plug, wood and stone. They used it to flood a cut. If you open it, water fills. It can't hold shape in running water. Cole's pulse hammered. Where? Jonah's eyes flicked toward the creek passage. Half-mile, marked 3 cuts, on the wall. Madsen heard enough. He nodded at 2 deputies. With Mercer, move! Cole grabbed Finn by the sleeve and shoved him toward Elias and Harlan. Keep the rhythm. Keep them loud. Don't let Jonah go quiet. Finn's eyes were wide. He nodded hard, stamping and humming as if his life depended on it, because it did. Cole and Madsen and 2 deputies slipped into the creek tunnel at a run crouch, lanterns bobbing. Behind them, the mine chamber echoed with the stomp-clap rhythm like a war drum. The creek passage was wet and low. Their boots splashed through shallow water that cut cold through leather. Cole scanned the wall for scratches. 1 cut, 2, 3. Fresh, sharp, like someone had marked it in a hurry. Here. They pushed deeper. The air grew colder, the water deeper around their ankles, then calves. A low rumble came from ahead, not the mine settling, but water pressure held back by something older than the town. They reached it, a timbered plug wedged across the passage, stones packed behind, tar-black seams, an old floodgate, crude and vicious. Madsen stared. If we breach it, this whole tunnel fills. That's the point, Cole rasped. A deputy swallowed. And if we drown? Cole didn't pretend courage. Then we drown loud. They set tools to it, axes, pry bars, working fast, breath steaming. Each strike echoed down the passage. The water trembled with every hit. Behind them, faint through stone, the stomp-clap rhythm continued, slower now, strained, as if men were tiring. The whisper seeped through the tunnel anyway, thin and searching. Quiet, Madsen snarled and started humming with no words, ugly and loud as he swung his axe. Cole drove the pry bar into a seam and levered. The timber groaned. A thread of water hissed through, cold as knife steel. The deputy flinched. It's coming! Cole felt it too, a pressure shift behind them, the air thickening as if the thing had slid into the creek passage, following their noise, tasting their fear. Keep working, Cole barked and slammed his shoulder into the timber. The seam widened, water punched through in a hard jet, spraying their faces. The plug began to fail. From behind, the lantern light dimmed suddenly, and the cold hook behind Cole's ear tightened like a fist. The whisper arrived right at his neck, intimate again. You can't drown debt. Cole set his jaw and shoved harder. The timber cracked with a sound like a gunshot, and the plug gave way. Water exploded into the passage, a roaring black wall, slamming into their legs, their chests, their throats. The lantern went out instantly. Darkness swallowed them as water took everything. Cole grabbed Madsen's coat by instinct and was ripped sideways as the current surged past, dragging them back toward the mine chamber like leaves in a chute. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't see. But he could hear, faintly, impossibly, beneath the roar of water, a grinding sound like something tearing itself apart, and a whisper that turned into a rasping howl as running water stripped it of shape. Then, just as Cole's lungs began to tear for air, the current threw him into open space and slammed him against stone. He surfaced choking, half-drowned in the mine chamber now flooded knee-deep and rising fast. Lanterns bobbed in frantic hands. Men shouted wordless noise through panic. Elias and Finn hauled at Harlan, who was dragging Jonah's stretcher toward higher ground, and in the center of the chamber, where the wrong dark had been, the water churned around something that couldn't hold together. Pale strips thrashed in the current like torn hide. The whisper tried to form words and failed, broken into bubbles and wet rasp. Jonah's eyes were open, fixed on the churning water. His face went calm in a way that terrified Cole more than the creature ever had. It's closing, Jonah whispered. The water rose to Jonah's stretcher edge. Harlan screamed soundlessly, clapping his free hand against his thigh as tears streamed. Cole fought through the flood toward Jonah, but the current shoved him back, relentless. The creek water wanted out. It wanted everything. Jonah's gaze met Cole's, steady. Don't open, Jonah breathed, and then his eyes slid shut as the water climbed his chest and the mine chamber filled with roaring sound that no whisper could ride, until, under all that roar, the hook behind Cole's ear went suddenly slack, like a line cut clean, and the last thing Jonah exhaled wasn't a word at all, just a thin breath swallowed by water. Cole fought the current until his shoulders burned and his lungs felt shredded, but the water owned the chamber now. It surged around the rail grooves, slammed into posts, slapped against knees and thighs, and rose another inch with every heartbeat. Lanterns bobbed like drowning stars in frantic hands, throwing jittery light across faces twisted by fear and grief. Harlan had Jonah's stretcher hooked under his arms, dragging it up the slope toward a higher ledge by the wall. Elias and Finn hauled at the blanket ends, feet slipping, hands raw. The three rescued children clung together behind them, crying without words, their small hands beating thighs and boards to keep sound alive. Jonah didn't fight. He lay still, eyes closed, mouth parted, water licking at his ribs. Cole lunged, caught the stretcher's side, and the current ripped his grip loose like it was nothing. He stumbled, slammed into Madsen, and both of them went down in a knee-deep surge that tried to roll them like logs. Madsen came up coughing, clapping one hand against the rock in a furious rhythm just to keep his mouth from going quiet. Elias's voice cracked through the roar, raw and desperate. "Pull! Pull!" Harlan's face was a mask of pain. He dragged harder, inch by inch, until the stretcher's front edge scraped onto the higher rock shelf. Finn shoved from behind, sobbing, stamping and humming the same wordless tune through tears. The stretcher slid onto the ledge with a final scrape. Jonah's body didn't move. Harlan hovered over him, shaking so hard his hands couldn't find Jonah's pulse. He pressed his ear to Jonah's mouth like a man begging for a breath to return. Nothing. Only the roar of water and the slap of boots and hands against stone. Cole climbed onto the ledge, water streaming from his coat, and shoved Harlan aside gently but firm. He put 2 fingers to Jonah's throat. No flutter. No fight. The hinge had closed. The cold hook behind Cole's ear, there for days, tightening and tugging, was gone. Not eased. Gone. Like a rope cut and pulled away into dark. The mine chamber shook once, subtle, a settling shudder as water found new paths. Lantern flames steadied, no longer dipping like a breath pressed against them. The men's stomps didn't feel like desperation now. They felt like human noise again. But grief didn't care about relief. Elias stared down at Jonah, face blank, eyes dry and wide. His hands kept clapping against his thighs, hard and fast, as if he stopped, the world would take another boy. Finn knelt at Jonah's feet, lips trembling, and tried to speak, but all that came out was a broken exhale. He started humming again, not because it helped now, but because he didn't know what else to do with a mouth that had learned silence was dangerous. Harlan made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Then he folded over Jonah's chest, shoulders shaking. His hands slapped weakly at Jonah's blanket, a rhythm that didn't know how to stop. Madsen climbed onto the ledge, face gray. He looked at Jonah, then at Cole. His voice came out hoarse. "Is it over?" Cole stared at the flooded chamber below. The water churned less now, the wild pull easing into a steady flow toward the creek passage. The iron door still stood, seam packed with caustic paste, quiet as a tomb. No whisper seeped through it, no pressure pressed at the back of the skull, no mud prints appeared in the rising water. "It's not walking," Cole said. "Not right now." Madsen swallowed. "And Pike?" Cole didn't answer immediately. He looked at the iron door, at the paste smeared into its seam like a desperate prayer. Pike was behind it, or wherever the dark had kept him when it wanted leverage. Maybe that leverage was gone now. Maybe Pike had become payment. Cole didn't know, and the not knowing felt like a bruise that would never heal. Elias's voice cut in, flat and sharp. "We leave him," Madsen blinked. "What?" Elias pointed at the iron. "We leave whatever's back there. We don't open anything ever again." One of the rescued boys began to cry louder, and the girl pressed her face into his shoulder, clapping her small hands against her own arms because she'd learned the beat meant safety. Cole looked at the children and felt the weight of the valley settle into a new shape. This wasn't a hero ending. This was a surviving ending. "The water's rising," a deputy shouted, voice cracking. "We gotta go." Cole nodded once. "Back the way we came." They moved as a group, keeping the noise going out of habit now more than fear, hauling Jonah's stretcher between 4 men. The creek passage carried the flood's pressure, water rushing past their shins and calves, trying to drag them backward. Lanterns stayed high, boots found purchase by memory. At the great exit, daylight hit them hard, white winter sun on blackened willow stumps, steam rising off soaked coats. Townsfolk waited in a wide ring, kept back by deputies. When they saw the children emerge first, alive, there was a collective sound, relief tangled with shame. When they saw the stretcher, the ring fell silent anyway. Madsen stepped forward, voice loud, forcing it to carry. Church cellar's been found. Chains, rings, lie, proof enough for any court. Any man who helped will be held. Any man who tries to hide will be dragged out. A few men looked down. A few women covered their mouths. Nobody argued. Harlan carried Jonah's head end himself, refusing help, jaw clenched like if he let go Jonah would vanish again. Finn walked beside him, humming under his breath, eyes fixed ahead. Elias walked last, hands empty, shoulders squared. He didn't look at the creek. He didn't look at the mine cut. He didn't look at the church ruins. He looked at the town. As they reached the main street, a clerk from the rail office, hands ink-stained, face pale, stepped out from behind a barrel and stammered something about telegrams and land notices. Madsen shoved him back with a hard look that said, "Not today." They laid Jonah on a table in the livery, clean cloth under him. Somebody brought warm water. Somebody brought a blanket that didn't smell like fear. The three rescued children sat close, hands linked, staring at Jonah like he might blink if they watched hard enough. He didn't. Outside, wind rattled boards. The town stayed loud with work, hammering buckets, voices, like everyone had agreed without saying it that silence was no longer allowed. Madsen pulled Cole aside by the stable door. His voice was low. "That land office you got out of Pike, I'm sending riders. Today." Cole nodded. "Burn the duplicate deeds. Put the valley back in its own hands." Madsen's eyes flicked toward the creek line. "And if it comes back?" Cole felt the absence behind his ear like a scar you only noticed when you touched it. "Then we don't feed it. No names over graves. No quiet bargains. No pretending." Madsen swallowed. "People won't understand." "They will when they want to live," Cole said. Finn approached, face blotchy, trying to stand straight. "Mr. Cole," he whispered, "you leaving?" Cole looked at the boy, then at the town that had almost been swallowed by its own hunger, and at the children who were alive because Jonah had closed the hinge with his last breath. He didn't give Finn comfort. He gave him truth. "I can't stay. I'm the one who opened." Finn's lip trembled. "So it'll follow you?" Cole didn't answer fast. He listened. No whisper, no pressure, just wind and distant hammering and the soft murmur of people trying to keep the world from going quiet again. "If it follows," Cole said finally, "it'll have to walk on dry ground." Elias stepped up, eyes hard. "You'll come back if it starts again." Cole met the boy's stare. "If it starts again, you don't wait for me." Elias blinked once, a child's blink. Then the hard came back. He nodded. Cole saddled his mare at sunset. The sky over Rattlesnake Crossing was bruised purple, and the church ruins stood like a warning in silhouette. Madsen and two deputies watched from the street. Finn watched from the livery door. Elias watched from beside Jonah's covered form, hands clasped tight, jaw clenched. Cole swung into the saddle and turned toward the road out of the valley. As he rode, he didn't look back. Looking back was how men got stuck in places that wanted them. But when the creek came into view one last time, running dark under burned willow stumps, the surface stayed smooth, unbroken, innocent as water could pretend to be. Cole let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Then, far downstream, a single bubble rose and popped, small, harmless, followed by a faint, almost inaudible scrape like wood shifting in mud. Not a voice, not a whisper, just something reminding the valley it could listen. Cole kicked his mare into a faster gait and rode into the darkening road until the town lights disappeared, and the only sound left was hoofbeats and wind. Loud enough, he told himself, to keep anything hungry from finding the quiet.